OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Very good morning to you. Welcome along this Monday morning. It is time for us to pour over the coals of Ireland's defeat against Luxembourg. We'd love to hear from you this morning. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Get in touch with us on that. And best thing to do is probably leave a comment on the YouTube stream as well. Or indeed, you can always tweet us at OffTheBallAM. We're going to be talking about the Ireland game for most of the morning. We're going to start with Leinster's absolutely dominant win against Munster with Alan Quinlan in about 2 minutes' time. In the meantime, Owen, what's your immediate reaction? What was your sense of what happens now with Ireland?
It's very hard to put a finger on it. I think that there needs to be a seeing through of the Stephen Kenny campaign, doesn't there? Like it does seem that everybody who was on the Stephen Kenny bandwagon is now questioning their position at this point. At least you would have more certainty come the end of this campaign. And if you're asking me this morning what needs to happen in the short term, you got to give Stephen Kenny until the end of the campaign. And that's the way it's been framed across a lot of the back pages this morning. It's the way it's been framed quite a lot over the last 24 hours. And everybody who watched the game on Saturday night know that it's about more than just Stephen Kenny as well. The evergreen question of development in Ireland has come up, but also the question of what the players were doing on Saturday night has come up as well. And I think Seamus Coleman, they were lucky he was the man who fronted up on Saturday night to make it a little bit better. Lucky he was
player of the match, eh?
Lucky he was player of the match. Like, it was an embarrassment of a performance from the players. Like, this idea of players not showing for the ball. David Myler and Kevin Kilbane making the point yesterday that players maybe didn't want it enough, that Seamus Coleman was the only person who really wanted to make some sort of rush, some sort of hurry of the game to try and get 3 points in the second half. And this idea of fitness that has popped up over the last couple of weeks. What the hell is going on? I don't care how many Premier League minutes you have played all season. If you're not fit enough to play 2 games in a week, then we truly are in a terrible position when it comes to our national team. And of course, people will say this morning, well, the manager of the national team should realise this and not play the guy who isn't fit. Completely accept that. It turns out there's a lot of blame to go around.
Yeah, there's nobody else.
I think I feel sorry for all the primary school teachers in Dubai who've moved to the Middle East in recent years. They don't get their World Cup in Qatar. They don't get to hop across there in 2022 and enjoy an Irish World Cup. That they're the big losers this morning, I think, from what's happened over the weekend.
I mean, they'll get to go and enjoy good quality football between the 47th and 48th ranked nations in the world who have managed to squeeze into this massive bloated World Cup. But that won't be us, obviously. Maybe Luxembourg will be there to represent the plucky underdogs.
Maybe they will. Luxembourg, I don't know. We don't want to get into an area this morning where we're talking up Luxembourg. That's one thing I don't want to do. As much as I really want to say this is like losing to Georgia, because it kind of is like losing to Georgia.
No, Georgia nearly beat Spain. Georgia, at the weekend, Spain scored a 92nd minute winner after Georgia had a man sent off to win that game 2-1. And they came from, I think Georgia scored first. So, everybody needs to cool the jets a little bit on how international football, Robbie Morton, I think, on Twitter posted the team that Ireland beat Luxembourg with 2-1 in a game under Jack Charlton. And that had Man United, Arsenal and Liverpool players in it. I think we would have beaten Luxembourg if we had Manchester United, Liverpool and Arsenal players in the team at the weekend. But we don't. We have subs from the Championship and a League One goalkeeper who was our best player, by the way. Well, sorry, Coleman was clearly our best player. But there are many, many things that we need to talk about. And the responsibility of the manager in the middle of that is part of the pie chart. It's like, a significant part of the pie chart. But this is a well-coached team who has Thomas Tuchel's head coach working for us in the backroom team. I think it's been interesting, and it will be interesting to see how quickly the knives are being sharpened for Kenny. The knives that had already been sharpened for months and months and months, how they're stabbing him now in public over the next while. And it's going to be very difficult for him, and it's going to be very difficult for anybody who thinks that the future of Irish football should be in some way progressive. Like the word progressive is an evil, nasty word. But if you look at all the other things that have worked in Irish sport, there's always been an element of progression in it. The Kilkenny hurlers, the Dublin footballers in particular, Leinster, all of these things took time to get right. And maybe Kilkenny was just a golden generation, but the Dublin footballers they had to get their systems in place for a decade, massive amounts of investment, and then all of a sudden, actually, that process becomes industrialised. With Leinster, it was the same. Leinster were rubbish for years, absolutely rubbish for years. They were flaky, and look, I think there's lots for us to get our teeth stuck into, and
The concern I would have is the fact that this now comes back to a lot of old school principles. What happens next? That the progressive nature of Stephen Kenny sort of goes out the window a little bit. It's about picking up a dressing room that are on the floor, and that's where a lot of the questions will be asked to Stephen Kenny over the next few months. Does he have the charisma? Does he have the communication skills to pull his players up off the ground? They may not be fair questions. Maybe a manager should be judged on what his managerial ability is. But it seems that once you get beaten by Luxembourg, everything is on the table. All bets are off when it comes to the criticism that can be levelled at the manager. And things are going to get ugly over the next little while. I think if results don't turn then in September, things are going to get even more ugly. And you can see Roy Barrett in the papers this morning saying that the possibility of a new contract at the end of this campaign is still alive.
yeah,
But it'll be,
Roy Barrett has no other alternative to say that, because if he says no, there's no chance of Stephen Kenny getting a new contract, then the rest of this,
he's lame duck.
the rest of this campaign is completely pointless. Now, like, it's not beyond the bounds of possibility. In world sport, you have seen turnarounds from teams where a manager can somehow rescue a situation like the one that Kenny is in. But it's very, very difficult to see how it's possible to come back from a result like this. Like, you know, Mick McCarthy did come back from the Macedonia thing. That's why we have that jersey, is because he did survive. Now, in that scenario, they were surviving because Macedonia prevented us from qualifying automatically for European Championships. Like, it was a completely different situation, and that team was gifted. That team was really gifted. In this scenario, the parallels with Cyprus are difficult to ignore, because that Cyprus defeat essentially knocked us out of that campaign, and it was one campaign and done for Steve Staunton. But the Staunton era was like chaotic and comedically bad. I think there's a realistic assessment of the quality of the footballers we have now versus the quality of the footballers that like played in that night against Cyprus, which we can come back to that a little bit later on, because the Cyprus thing is interesting. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number if you want to get in touch with us, and of course you can always leave a comment. OTB AM is the hashtag, or you can get us on YouTube as well. Time for us to turn our attention to rugby, though. Alan Quinlan is with us. Alan, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are you?
Yeah, good. Look, I've been getting it in the neck a little bit from people for talking Munster up last week, but I legitimately believed that the squad they had, the emotional intensity of what was happening with Billy Holland and CJ Stander, would result in a performance that would give a physicality to Munster, which should allow them to break even. But that physicality did not exist at any point from Munster over the course of that game. And it's like, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I was, I'll be honest with you, I expected, if I was a Leinster player last week, Jaron, I was listening to a lot of the pundits and papers talking and writing about this is Munster's best chance, this is the best team on paper Munster have had, and people predicting they'd win. It would fire me up. I think we've questioned the intensity of the Derby match a number of times over the years, but Leinster seemed to come out just really fired up and with a point to prove that there's no let up from them. Their standard is as high as ever. Standards are as high as ever, and that their quality is there, and that they're not going to roll over and kind of go with the narrative here and make this a close game and let Munster settle in and potentially, you know, get the ball to what on paper was a really, really good backline. But bar Damien Dialende, that was the same backline 2 years ago, who were well beaten by Leinster as well. And I made the point that it doesn't matter what kind of a backline you have, it's up front where it counts, and it'll never change in rugby. If you're not getting a decent platform, nobody can play. And, you know, I was excited about Joey Carberry, him coming back. Maybe we expected too much out of him. He's only a couple of games played. He didn't play well. He missed a few tackles. He was targeted by Leinster. But the worrying part here for me is that it's back to the drawing board. You know, they've lost ground here that maybe they've gained a bit of ground throughout the season, and that optimism and hope hasn't been justified because it's back to square one again.
That, I guess, is the bit that is almost most shocking. When you think about the team that Leinster named the players who didn't start that game. So Sexton didn't start, Furlong didn't start, Caelan Doris not in the squad because of injury, Ringrose isn't there. You can go on and on. There's several more. Levy obviously out injured, Will Connors out injured. Like, it wasn't Leinster's strongest team by any stretch of the imagination, and yet, okay, it's 6-all at half time, but that's because Leinster were completely inefficient. They had 3 or 4 line breaks where if the ball goes to hand in the final pass, the chances are the winger goes under the post, or certainly he's getting in the corner, and they could easily have been, it could have been 26, or it could have been 17-6 at half time, and nobody would have batted an eyelid and gone, actually, that's about fair for Leinster's dominance. How did that happen?
Well, it happened by the tone that Leinster set and the cohesion they have. Sometimes if you bring back all your internationals, it doesn't just happen and automatically happens. And maybe, you know, Munster went full strength. They're missing RG Snyman, is probably the only one that would come in and start in the team. A lot of the players who played with Leinster, you know, I think they have the luxury of doing that, Leo Cullen has, because he's a lot of quality players just sitting under those internationals as well. And they've proven that time and time again over the years. Ross Byrne, you know, was an armchair ride for him because his forwards played so well. There's loads of parts you could pick this game up. You know, Munster had 36% possession. It's very, very difficult when you have that little amount of possession, 29% territory. So they're not playing in the right areas. And then when they had the ball on occasions, they turned it over, they knocked it on. They had 10 turnovers from knock-ons and losing the ball in contact, which is way too high. They missed 35 tackles. You just cannot expect to be at that level and that standard and expect to win a game. And Leinster were just so committed. Watching them in the warm-up, Ger, I saw a little bit of an attitude about Leinster that kind of frightened me. I'm not saying warm-ups make a huge difference, but it's just the body language, and that's what made me fearful. I think they had an edge to them, and they started right from the start. And what was really key for me, and I was at the game, I was working for Premier, and I said it was, how will both teams come out in the second half? There's always an intrigue when you head into the dressing room at half time of regrouping. What do coaches say? What do players say? And what do they believe? And what needs to happen in the start of that second half? Because they're the big moments in these matches. And, you know, Munster needed to come out firing in the second half and break Leinster a little bit, get some territory down on their end of the field, make them tackle, hold on to the ball, wear them out a little bit. You may not get scores from it, but psychologically they never did that. And it was Leinster who came out firing in the second half. So I'm imagining they're sitting there saying, look, they're focusing on the chances we've created and how do we keep that going? And they did that, whereas Munster just couldn't get hold of the ball. And then some of the old habits came back in where they kicked the ball away. And when they had opportunities to maybe, you know, particularly that turnover that Munster got and Conor Murray box kicked into the 22 where Hugo Keenan, no pressure on him, he takes it. And it just deflates the opposition. So they came up with loads of moments that deflated themselves and they were sloppy. I thought John Klein being taken off was a wrong call. I think he was one of the players who showed a real work rate, a passion and a desire and an aggression in the tackles. He knocked the ball on twice, but if you look back at both passes, they were slapped off him by Conor Murray, whereas Luke McGrath was kind of stepping out and just leaving lovely soft deft touches there for players to run onto it. So we know he doesn't have the best hands in the world, but I think they were difficult moments for him, and they were turnovers and they had no pressure there. Rhys Ruddock was sensational, 23 carries. There was times where he'd make a carry, get back up, run around the corner, 2 or 3 phases later, another carry. He had 23 carries, Jack Conan had 20 carries, Josh van der Fleer 7. That's 50 carries from their back row. Peter O'Mahony 1 carry, Gavin Coombs 14, who actually played really well and showed that he's a quality player and one for the now and the future. CJ Stander had 7. So Munster didn't have the ball a lot, but you've got to go and find the ball. You've got to take it back off the opposition. When you get it, you've got to protect it. So in the back row alone, 50 carries as opposed to 22.
Yeah.
You know, Keane Healy 9, Kelleher 9, Porter 12.
It's that front row and the difference. That was one of the kind of key differences between the teams. That the Leinster front row and so they're back. The second rows of both teams. I think Klein played quite well as well. You feel like there's close enough to parity there between the starting second row that Leinster had at the weekend. But the front row is significantly different in terms of the quality, and certainly the quality off the bench is not comparable at all. So, like all of the stuff, all of the work that Munster have done, is that the next area of recruitment that they need to look at?
Look, it's difficult here because the reality is they went out and spent big and they brought in 2 World Cup winners. You know, they don't have a blank checkbook that they can it's just not possible to go out and sign a complete new front row and loads of depth there. There's been a couple of issues there for years. And look, to be fair to the players, they tried hard. And, you know, if you look at the defensive stats of the Munster players, a lot of them have big numbers in the tackles, you know. Standard 22 tackles, Ty Byrne 20, Coombs 12, O'Mahony 10. So they're working hard without the ball. And there was moments in that first half where they got a big moment here or there, but they've got to be far more intelligent. And I was really surprised by the panic. Now, a lot of that, we can't just completely focus on how poor Munster were. Leinster were exceptional. Munster, you know, that fear before the game made Leinster play for 80 minutes to bring that kind of high intensity for 80 minutes. And they did that so well. And that was my biggest fear before the game. But for Munster, like, you can't just go out and sign a load of players now. They've actually invested really heavily in those 2 guys and made a big statement, and there was loads of optimism. So, of course, you're going to have off days and you're going to have days where things don't go right. But consistently over the 80 minutes, they never landed a blow. They never stressed Leinster in any sort of way. You know, I wouldn't say it was an easy match. Of course, it was a physical match, but Leinster were never, ever challenged for a sustained period of time. There was no moment in that second half that they were in the Leinster 22. So I've spoken to you about stats in the last couple of weeks in Irish games, and stats can be misleading at times. But when you delve down into, you know, the carries and the tackles and the turnovers and the missed tackles, you know, it doesn't matter. They're kind of real crucial moments and areas. And I was on with Bernard Jackman on Saturday, and he's a big believer of big moments, the big moments in games, big turnover, big tackle, somebody getting into the middle of a maul and breaking it up or holding a player up. Psychologically, they give you a real big lift out in the field in all sports when you have those big turnover moments, but none out of Munster, and they just looked flat and deflated. Questions about the way they played. I actually think they tried to pass the ball around a little bit, and maybe they went away from what they're really good at. They never got their maul going. They never got any sort of aggressive carries around the edges. Leinster fanned out a lot and defended very aggressively, but it was a very, very worrying performance from Munster, and one that, which it's strange to say, I didn't even want to be hard on him after the game. I felt sorry for him. I felt sorry. I had a real kind of shock factor. Like I said, the losing the match didn't shock me, because I thought Munster would have to have an A-class performance to beat them, because I did expect Leinster to be really up for this and not to give up the title easily. But it was very, very worrying, and the psychological damage of this now will be very telling.
Like it's interesting that you're saying you feel sorry for them. Like you remember a few years ago when Reggie Corrigan questioned Peter O'Mahony about the work rate or the commitment to the Munster team, and he bristled at that suggestion. Could the same suggestion be made of Munster, and especially maybe in that second half, going in at half-time knowing that it was a 6-all draw, having been well aware that Leinster could have killed them in that first half? Surely that half-time dressing room would have been in the old Munster days an unbelievable place to be, sensing that opportunity that Leinster weren't actually going to kill them off. Like, do questions need to be asked on that front, Alan?
Yeah, you can still say loads of things at half-time on. You know, I remember the Gloucester match in 2003 when we had to get the four tries, and we didn't know what the score we needed to win by. But I remember being in that dressing room, and it's a great place to be if you really believe it, if the psychology is there and if the energy is there. And, you know, there was guys screaming around that dressing room saying they don't want it. Keep the pain threshold high. Keep the tempo high, be so aggressive, and you feel that surge in energy. And we felt it that day. You can say all these things, but you have to go out and back it up with actions. And there was no actions in the second half. You know, Leinster are a very good side on, so some of the stuff they created in the first half was brilliant. It's very, very difficult to defend that. And Munster came up with some big tackles and a couple of big turnovers and great desire to get back and scramble defence, but surely it needs to be better than that. They had their intelligence about what to do with the ball and where they play and just making good decisions and not giving the ball back to Leinster. Munster gave it back to them pretty easy with poor kicks, turnovers, losing the ball in contact and a bit of panic. So that was really telling, I think, coming out in the second half. And you know, it's frustrating as well from a Munster point of view that they can't come out with the same bite, intensity and cohesion, if you like, to make a real statement in the game where they're Leinster hanging on defensively. They never really questioned. It was an easy defensive game for Leinster. Okay, you know, there was lots of big collisions around the edges and some big tackles and Munster made some good carries at times, but you've got to bring that to multi-phase. You've got to make it sustained, and you won't break Leinster down easily. So it's that was probably the disappointing part, that they never fired a shot. And then when they conceded a try and they gave away a penalty, it goes to 10 points. It's game over because this Leinster side are too good, and they're so hard to break down. But again, you know, you're in a situation where JJ Hanrahan sits back in the pocket and kicks the ball aimlessly up the middle of the field. It's hard for him, but I'd rather see him lose the game by another score and take a chance. And they just kind of went back. Craig Casey box kicked one out of his 22 again, and they just lacked that bit of leadership. And so a mixture of Leinster being really, really, really good and Munster worryingly just not firing a shot.
From Leinster's perspective, obviously, Leo Cullen was at pains to point out that they didn't back up a Pro 14 title with European performances to match it last year. They really need to kick on now because they're so dominant in the local league that this team will really only be happy. I mean, obviously, they were very happy with the trophy and what it meant for the players, particularly that extended squad. But clearly, they have designs on a European Cup this year, and their performances are at the level where they should have, where they should expect to take care of Toulon on Friday, and then obviously it'll be different in the semi-finals. But that's the level they're at the moment, where they're as good as anybody that's out there.
Yeah, and I think the psychological effect this will have on them, the belief it'll put in the squads. You know, they had a number of players too who are probably very frustrated. Luke McGrath's performance was brilliant, and you know, going forward against Toulon, can they get the same type of emotion next Friday night? They won't have the same emotion, but they're good enough to, and they've shown us with their consistency that they're good enough to get a real clinical performance again. It'll be difficult. Then they go away from home. Most probably it'll be Exeter in the semi-final if they beat Toulon. But the high standard just kind of continues with the changes, you know, that they make and the balance that and look, they've so much depth in so many positions. You know, they're missing Ringrose, James Ryan, Will Connors, and players come in and they make a real impact. And that's the luxury Leo Cullen has. But they're such a well-coached side as well. If they lost the game, maybe we'd be talking about their attack and the chances they butchered in the first half. But Sign is such a good side that they didn't panic. There was no panic there at all. And you just expect that they're going to kick on now, beat Toulon, and no big panic going to Exeter in that semi-final. Very, very difficult game if it happens, for sure, but you couldn't back against them now challenging for that European trophy, given what they showed us at the weekend.
Yeah, away semi-finals in Europe, obviously almost one of the hardest things in world sport to win, so it's not a gimme, but obviously we're making Friday a bit of a gimme, but look, that's where they're at the moment. Alan, good stuff. We'll let you go. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks, lads.
Alan Quinlan giving us his thoughts there on the game at the weekend. What was your take on how, I know you've been very cautious last week when I was talking Munster up. I legitimately thought Munster were going to produce one of those performances of manic aggression, the type of one that we saw when their B team played Australia, when they played the All Blacks, when the performance that they put out after Anthony Foley passed away, that this was a moment, given everything that was going on for them, given the, you know, everybody's saying Tyg Burns is shoo-in for the Lions. They have quality in that team. Conor Murray was back to something approximating his best. The backline's really, really good and has a chip on the shoulder about not getting Ireland recognition. It looked like it was all set up. And even at 6-all at half-time, because Leinster had butchered those opportunities, I thought there's a bang, smash and grab off this where if Munster come out and play a bit of cup rugby in that second half, you know, there'll be a scrum that goes their way and they'll fall over the line and suddenly Leinster will be behind. But there was no sense of it.
Yeah, and even those moments before half-time when Carberry and Murray have those few kicks, I know Carberry nails one of his two, Murray misses his. There was almost a sense there that, okay, Munster have a plan here. They get within shooting range and they take their 3 points. And there was a sense to that. They could almost try and rope it up Leinster for a lot of that first half. But you can only rope it up somebody if you're going to land a knockout blow in the second half, and that was never going to happen. And it's interesting that Alan talks about the warm-up, having been there in the stadium and seeing two different intensities altogether, and Leinster being really on it. He also talks about the fact that Leinster maybe don't rely on emotion as much as Munster, and if you are a province who have built up this idea of emotion, and that is your unique selling point almost, that Munster rugby is different, that you will rely on the emotion that comes from that unbelievable dressing room, from the pride of pulling on that jersey, then you need to kind of show up when it really matters. And they fell flat in their face when it really mattered, and it was a really poor performance. And Leinster were excellent. There's no getting away from that. But the reason why you were talking about Munster last week is because that Munster team is really good. They went out and they spent big to ensure that the gap started to close between them and Leinster. And the reality is what you have now is a situation like Mayo football was in the middle of the last decade, where things seem to be going pretty well, except when it actually comes to the biggest day and they go and they face a team from Dublin and they know that they're going to get beaten. And it looks like they know that they're going to get beaten every time they play Leinster.
Yeah. See, Munster are the new Mayo is what you're saying there.
It feels like it. That, like, I mean, you are a good team. You're certifiably the second best team in your competition. There's no getting away from that for Munster. But the difference between them and Mayo is that Mayo can say, well, Dublin have over 1 million people to pick from and they've got brilliant finances and all that. We can't do anything about that. Whereas Munster literally can, and they went out and signed 2 World Cup winners. And I know they had Dialande for that semi-final last year and it was at 10 points. But you expected after that, after he might settle into the province, that things might get a little bit better. And it's a 10-point defeat once again. It was eerily similar to the semi-final of last season, is my point.
It has the bang of Leinster versus Saracens, where Saracens are just better than them, like over the last couple of years, and almost nothing that Leinster did helped them to close the gap. There was like a little bit of a, we're going to be able to do it this time, and then you couldn't do it. It was like when England had Tuolagi and Vinapola at 8. It was like they just squashed us because they knew that they had our number, and that must be very frustrating / a little bit depressing for Munster fans this morning.
It is, but the thing is, you're looking at, maybe you start to think about things like preparation then when you come into it, and you're looking at Hugo Keenan being annoyingly good at fullback. Like, he doesn't make any mistakes especially when you kick the ball into his arms. Robbie Henshaw, annoyingly brilliant. But Munster also had outstanding performers in the Six Nations that had brought that form into this final. Tyg Byrne was one of the stars of the Six Nations, right up there on Robbie Henshaw's level. They also had players who were brilliant across the Six Nations, and it just seemed that the Leinster form from the Six Nations was more transferable into the Pro 14. So that comes back to whatever is going on there, that the Leinster players are just better prepared, and the squad doesn't hurt. There's no question about that.
They didn't pick the Six Nations players, largely.
Like, there is that. Like,
do you know, like that's the...
But at the same time, the best player in the park was Robbie Henshaw, and like Rhys Ruddock did get Six Nations minutes, Jack Conan did get Six Nations minutes, and like if you're going to pick them apart and say, well, at least they have the momentum from playing well in the green of Ireland, my point here is that the same goes for Munster.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think it's the players who weren't playing for Ireland that was the difference. But anyway, look, let's move on. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Give us your thoughts. If you're a Munster fan, we'd love to hear from you this morning. And if you're a Leinster fan too, what is the ceiling for this team now? And does it end up being a disappointing season if they don't win the European Cup, given how dominant they are in the Pro 14? Munster's front five don't have enough for the style of game they want to play, says Connor. Munster have been given Carberry, Dialende, Tyg Byrne, multiple Leinster players, Erasmus, the biggest stadium, and multiple Lions internationals. Money isn't their problem. I think Ulster would have some serious questions about whether Munster are certifiably the second best team in the Pro 14. Look, it'd be an interesting game, and really if we had semi-finals and finals, it might have actually helped that extra week to get Munster prepped for, or Ulster prepped for a final against Leinster. Might have been decent. We'll get to your soccer comments in a moment. You can, I think, guess what the tone of the comments coming in. Leave a comment on the YouTube, WhatsApp us 0879 180 180, or of course you can tweet us at OffTheBall AM. We're going to be back talking to Stephen Kenny next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
This is OTB Sports Radio.
But I do remember very vividly standing in the shower after the All-Ireland final saying to Fergus McCusker, is this it? Is this it? Desolate almost, like a sense of total anticlimax. And the two of us wandered up to the Cat and Cage and had a pint. In those days, there was no big formalities. And I can remember thinking, I can feel it now when I'm sitting here, that sense of anticlimax, which was a great lesson in life. Once it's behind you, you move on.
Off the Ball, Saturdays from 1 on OTB Sports Radio. Listen live on the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
We are going to hear from Stephen Ward a little bit later on in the show. If you've got questions for him, or indeed you want to talk anything about the football, then we'd love to hear from you this morning. Give us your views, leave a comment on the YouTube stream, or of course you can tweet us at OffTheBall AM. A reminder, OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. It is 3 minutes past 8 this morning. Now let's hear part of Stephen Kenny's press conference. It was embargoed until this morning. Naturally enough, he was asked whether his position is now in jeopardy.
Well, I think it's not something I'm focusing on. From my point of view, I can't affect that. I think it's not something that I'm focusing on at all. So, I have we all have setbacks, at various times, and I have absolute conviction in that I'm capable of doing a very good job here. But on tonight's evidence, that doesn't back it up tonight, and I do realise that, you know what I mean, and we have to do a hell of a lot better than that, and we didn't than we did tonight. Yeah, well, I absolutely. It's not. I don't think it's up to me to convince people. I think what we've got to do is just get better results now, and better performances. And I think that's. It's not for me to. I think we've just got to. We've another game now on Tuesday. We've just got to go again, and over the campaign we've got to do a lot better. I think than we did tonight. As I said, I thought the performance against Serbia was excellent, but ultimately, we didn't win, and so it's just tonight. It's just a real kick. It is a real setback for us. Like, and I'm not denying that. There's no getting away from that. But we just have to. I'll have to accept the criticism, to be honest with you, and that comes my way, like, and certainly fight harder, to do better, and so that'll be my intention.
Okay, so that was him when he was asked specifically about whether or not his job was in jeopardy. Here's a bit more talking about the performance of his players on Saturday night. Have a look.
Listen, we played really well in Serbia tonight. It was an exceptional display. We probably deserved to come out with a point, but we matched them over the 90 minutes in terms of the way we played. But today was certainly a step back. I think what it showed me today is that, and I'm not making excuses at all, it showed me that a lot of players struggle with the physical capacity of trying to play 2 games in 3 days, because a lot of them are not playing for their clubs. And I think that was very evident to quite a few players, and I think it wasn't their psychological preparation or their determination, actually, you know. They all love playing for their country. They wanted to do better than they did, but some players struggle to get anywhere near where they did the other night. I think, you know, tactically the game itself, Luxembourg had minimal distances between, say, centre back and centre forward. You know, probably 25 yards in the first half. So our movement of our front 2 and Alan Brown the 10, like, we were a little too predictable. We didn't stretch their back 4 in the way that you would. You know, you want your forwards to make runs beyond their back 4 to open up the space for players. But we all wanted it into feet, which is not ideal, you know, not what we wanted. And I think you need to stretch the game when that happens. But we did work a few good moves in that first half, and obviously it resulted in, you know, Callum Robinson pulling across for James Collins, which we you know, and there was a few moves like that, but we got in at half time. Obviously Matt Doherty come off at half time injured, and we decided to sort of say we need more creativity. So rather than go like for like, Alan Brown, who's played a lot in that position for his club, we decided to move him there, but put Robbie Brady on for trying to inject that creativity into the final third. But we did create chances. Obviously Callum Robinson's a great chance, Shane Long, the great chance, Alan Brown, the header, but still not enough. We should be creating more than we did, and Luxembourg had a couple of chances also, so we should be creating more than we did on the night like that, and we're really disappointed, and you know, we know that's not good enough.
Yeah, so that's a fairly honest assessment from Stephen Kenny of tactically what went wrong. If you've got a view this morning, @OffTheBallAM is the Twitter handle. You can just use the hashtag OTBAM, of course, as many of you are doing. Leaving comment on the YouTube stream for us this morning. Paul says, I feel sorry for the man. He looks totally crestfallen. James says it's a Steve Staunton situation again. You'd think they'd learned from that. Robbie says, we are what Scotland were only a couple of years ago, in disarray, but Kenny needs this campaign and possibly the next Euro campaign as well. Look, when we started this conversation about 5 months ago, or a year ago, or 18 months ago, whenever it was that Kenny actually started, we talked about the fact that this would be a battle for the soul of Irish football. And you can see that that's happening at the moment, that there is a culture war going on between those people who want us to shut up shop and defend and be 0-0 in every game and hope that Shane Duffy can score a header for us, or those people who feel like a proper analysis of how we got to this scenario is done now. A reckoning, the bill comes due for, and it's not just 20 years of underinvestment in Irish football. If you look back at the story of Irish football all the way back to the 1960s, when Irish people used to go to Irish football matches in big numbers in stadiums, the game disappeared. Slowly it was frittered away by successive FAIs all the way back to the 60s. This is like chronic generations of underinvestment. I see people going, oh, well, how come we were able to produce players in the 80s? Like, we were able to produce players in the 80s because all of the best English clubs scouted over here almost exclusively. They scouted here, they scouted in Scotland, they scouted in Wales. They weren't scouting in Lagos, they weren't scouting in South America, they weren't taking the best young French players the way they have been for the last 20 years. That's why we were able to produce players that played in the top teams in the Premier League. And the standard of football has massively progressed as a result of that. The game has become globalised, and we have not followed suit. So that bill is due, and we're paying that bill today. We paid it the other night against Luxembourg with the fact that we've got this weird team where half the team are kids and half the team are kind of nearly close enough to the end of their careers. There is no middle. Why is that? Because there's been no players coming through. Why is that? Because the bill is due for 50, 60 years of underinvestment and no plans and no structure. And actually, you know, maybe the Rude Doctor experiment, for all the difficulties that people have with him and what he's done, like, that's beginning to show fruit with the 5 players who are under 20 coming through playing senior international football. Like, that's his generation of footballers coming through. That's the first ones. And like, who's the manager to take them through? I don't know. I mean, maybe it's not Stephen Kenny, but at the moment, you'd say it's definitely more likely to be Stephen Kenny than Neil Lennon. It's definitely more likely to be Stephen Kenny than Mick McCarthy, because Mick didn't do this. Like, Mick didn't qualify from the last European campaign. We should have been relegated in the national, whatever the league is called, League of Nations, except they changed the rules to allow us to stay one division higher than Luxembourg, who nearly got promoted. So, like, I don't know.
There's 2 things there. The first thing is the idea of people maybe wanting to go back to the Mick McCarthy days. So, like,
let's get it, put him under pressure.
But
Go on, Big Jack.
People forget that Ireland came frighteningly close to a Saturday situation on a couple of occasions under Mick McCarthy, the Gibraltar game and the Georgia game, and just Georgia games, really, I should say. Like, if you think that Ireland haven't come close to getting beaten by Georgia over the last couple of years, then you were in dreamland. And that is what the situation was on Saturday night. It was less getting beaten by San Marino, it was a 3rd seed getting beaten by a 4th seed, which shouldn't happen against Luxembourg from the Republic of Ireland standpoint ever. But it's not a surprise either that this has happened to this group of players. The second thing is the bunch of youngsters that you talk about there that have come through. Who knows for sure if that is the product of a plan? Who knows whether or not Rude Doctor's plan is working? That could be a coincidence. Who knows if that group of players are actually going to be any good once they mature and are actually the leaders of this team, and when Seamus Coleman retires and the new captain steps up? The thing is, nobody really knows. And as long as we don't know, I think, first of all, the manager probably needs to be kept until the end of this campaign and no rash action can be taken. And beyond that, then, is there questions to be asked beyond that? Is there questions to be asked of what Rude Doctor is doing, what his performance plan is? I don't actually know, and I don't think many people actually know. I think there is this sense of the Irish football dying on the vine completely. But I think on a basic level, Ireland getting beaten by a lower seed on Saturday night was not a surprise whatsoever. And I'm actually surprised by the surprise to the result. I'm not surprised by the massive reaction to it, because, as you say, there are 2 camps that seem to have developed within the first couple of games of Stephen Kenny's reign. Those camps are more firmly entrenched than ever after Saturday.
Yeah, for you, what are the 2 camps?
The pro Stephen Kenny and the pro idea of overhauling the way Ireland play football, and the actually Martin O'Neill, Trapattoni and Mick McCarthy, they were the good days.
Yeah, look, it's again, we talked about this being the battle for the soul of Irish football. Stephen Kenny's not the only person in Irish football who thinks that maybe we shouldn't just be long ball merchants who put 10 men behind the ball, because ultimately that's self-defeating and is not going to take us anywhere in the long run. And you know, like, if because he is the exemplar of the person who's saying we should try and be tactically aware, we should be capable of producing technical footballers, because he's become the person so closely synonymous with that, because he says one of his aims is to change the way people speak about Irish football when they come up against us. It's become a stick to beat him with by people who are like, no, we can't do that, because things were great. Things were great in the past. We had a great team in the past when, you know, we went to the Euros and under trap that one time, and things fell apart. Now, in fairness, I thought there was plenty in the Martin O'Neill era where when that team in particular that did go to the Euros tried to play football and got all our best young players in their mid-20s in the team. It's just that none of those players actually ended up kicking on and using that Euros as an opportunity for them to bed down into a starter in a Premier League team. If you think back to the team, the Jeff Hendrick, the Robbie Brady team, that night in Lille, how many of those players used that as like a springboard to go and become week in, week out Premier League starters? And that's what we need, the national team is a function of the quality of the players that it has. And at the moment, we're picking players from the Championship, we're picking players from League One, we're picking players who are subs in the Championship, who are either we have to put them in the team even though they're injured. James McLean's the cavalry, and fair play to him for showing up and making himself available, but his club manager said he wouldn't be fit to play if Stoke had a game. But we need him. We absolutely needed him to come on and be a dynamic force for us on the left wing. That's not an ideal scenario.
One of the real disappointments from Saturday night as well is that under Martin O'Neill and under Mick McCarthy, there were moments where you thought to yourself, this team can play. Like Mick McCarthy's last game, the 1-1 draw against Denmark in Dublin. Ireland played really well that night. Not forgetting that the last time Denmark had come to Dublin before that, they had hockeyed Ireland. And Ireland held their own that night and played really well and could have come away with the win. There was the night in Vienna when they won and it looked like we were going to the 2018 World Cup. Ireland played really well. So that when this new manager came in, the hope was that Ireland would be able to do that in every single game and that the managers were actually holding the groups of players back. And I said it on the show last week, I'll hold my hands up and say, under Stephen Kenny, Ireland might have a better chance of getting 12 points from these games against Luxembourg and Azerbaijan. I genuinely expected that. I was clearly wrong about that. That take is done and dusted immediately after one of the games against this country, because what I saw over the last couple of years was an Ireland team that were sleepwalking into games against the likes of Georgia, and that defeat was coming. And it came on Saturday night under the new manager, and that for me is the real disappointment, and that for me is the thing that might start to change the opinions of people in the pro-Kenny camp.
Tease that out. Why?
Well, because Stephen Kenny was not for me, this was not necessarily going to be a revolutionary approach. This was going to be an approach that made sense, that got the best out of Ireland. This wasn't going to be necessarily Ireland overachieving, because my sense was that Ireland maybe had underachieved a little bit in a few games they had played in recent years. The Austria and Denmark games are games that I cite there that Ireland hit their level. Like a draw against Denmark, not a bad result. A win away at Austria, an excellent result. And that is when Ireland were playing at their level. And my opinion was that because of the manager's retrograde tactics, which you can say Mick McCarthy in particular, again, in my opinion, retrograde, they were falling flat and not getting 6 points against Georgia in a qualification campaign, or making hard work of Gibraltar. I thought that the Republic of Ireland had players to ensure that those games weren't gimmies, but that they could have a little more comfort in those games. And one of those games in this campaign was going to be at home to Luxembourg. And we all know what happened. So that is a vital pillar of my belief in Stephen Kenny, for example, which now you just have to question. And I still think that he needs to see out this campaign. I still see the value in keeping Stephen Kenny sweet. I still think that he has a brilliant football brain, and even if this doesn't work out beyond this campaign for him, I still think the FAI should be having conversations with him about why didn't that work out? Why didn't we see the results of the way you were thinking about football in this World Cup 2022 qualification campaign? And I would like to think that the FAI can learn from that. So there's a lot of different things, and I think that if you are sitting there after Saturday night and saying that you're not questioning your beliefs, if you are fully pro Stephen Kenny, you're probably lying. At the same time, it's okay to still think that he can turn this thing around.
0879 180 180 is the number. It's 19 minutes past 8 this morning. They wanted to play under McCarthy. They looked interested under Kenny. They look really disinterested in hiring a manager with no experience like he does is beginning to shine out. He was the Republic of Ireland's under-21 manager. He has managed in multiple leagues. Like he's somebody who's got 15 years experience of management. It was a disgrace losing to Luxembourg. Tralee Dynamos would have put in a better performance, says Paul, and loads more coming through on the YouTube channel as well. If you want to get and leave a comment there, or at Off the Ball AM as well. It's 20 minutes past 8 this morning. Stephen Ward is with us now to talk to us about the performance and what the players are going to be going through and just the general sense of it. Stephen, before we ask you about what the players are going through at the moment, what was your analysis of the game? How did that happen?
Morning, lads. How you doing? Yeah, listen, really disappointing game, obviously. you know, a game that we would have expected to win, of course. And yeah, listen, I think over the last few days, you know, reflecting on it, I think I've, you know, seen and read a lot of, you know, people's comments and stuff. And listen, the one thing I know from experience, and I think a lot of footballers will know, everyone's been on the end of these results, and, you know, there's no one that will be hurting more than the players and staff themselves. So, yeah, listen, really disappointed. I was absolutely gutted, everyone involved, because, you know, I was desperate for them to get the win and sort of kickstart the campaign. And, yeah, I think everyone was in a state of shock, really. But, you know, yeah, disappointing night. But I think, you know, a lot has been said, and the players will be really hurting. And, you know, I've been there myself, and it'll be a real sombre few days for the lads, unfortunately.
Seamus Coleman was very critical of his teammates in the post-match interview that he did. He said that players weren't looking for the ball, and you know, it's hard. It's going to be hard for the rest of the dressing room to look him in the eye, because that was true. Certainly in the second half, when the game was in the melting pot, we did not have players who went looking for it.
I don't know about players won't be able to look him in the eye, so forth. I think Seamus has, you know, came out and gave a great interview, honest and open, and he's captain. You know, that's his job, and he leads by example. He led by example in both his performances, and the respect that the players have and the staff will have for Seamus, not only as a player but as a person in that whole camp. You know, no one will disagree with him, and no one will feel any awkwardness around him, because Seamus is, you know, a brilliant captain for the country. And like I said, you know, what he says you listen to, and there's a lot of young lads in that dressing room, and they'll take heed of what he said, and I'm sure they'll want to improve themselves.
Have you seen that happen? Is that I guess, a natural product of a young team, players not showing for the ball, players not having the confidence maybe to kind of make that run, or to really get on the ball in a high-pressure situation?
Yeah, listen, it is difficult sometimes. You know, a lot of the lads out there were very inexperienced at that level. But in saying that, we put in a fantastic performance in Serbia, and, you know, we were arguably unlucky not to come away with something, especially, you know, scoring 2 goals away from home. You know, they scored a bit of a wonder goal, and you look at the penalty incident as well, that really could have been given as well, maybe on a day if there was VAR. You know, we might have had a penalty as well and gone 2-1 up in the game. So, yeah, listen, it's like I said, it's a very difficult time for the lads, for the team, and, you know, the young lads coming through, you know, they'll learn from this experience. There's a lot of good senior heads in that camp. You know, lads that obviously would have been very disappointed not to play, but are great characters around the place, and I'm sure they'll be rallying around the younger players and the sort of newer lads to international football, and you know, be keeping their chins up, and, you know, telling them just to look forward, and hopefully this will be something that'll make them stronger going into the future games and the future campaigns.
What did you make of the system that was played, 3 at the back and wing backs?
Well, I think it's difficult to sort of overanalyse the system, because, you know, Stephen's come in, you know, he's trying to change the sort of blueprint of how we play. That's how he wanted us to play. We used it in Serbia. You know, I've heard arguments maybe we should have had gone with 4 at the back, but, you know, we had enough in that game, no matter what formation we played, I think, to win, and I think he would have thought that himself. And I think a lot of the lads that had played out in Serbia had deserved their chance to play again. So it was more or less the players fitting the system, I think. But, you know, I don't think that was a major factor in us not winning the game, because, you know, we had two strikers on the pitch. We had plenty of attacking prowess. But, you know, for whatever reason, it just didn't happen for the lads on the night. And, you know, it was really disappointing for them. And, you know, I was really gutted for everyone involved, because, you know, it was a game where we really needed to win. And you know, it's going to be tough now for us to get back and qualify.
I was just asking the question basically just from your own perspective as a full back. Like, is this getting the most out of Enda Stevens and Matt Doherty? I know you're right that no matter what the position, the formation is, Ireland should get the job done against Luxembourg. But just on that specific point, is it holding those 2 players back in particular, or could they be doing more themselves?
Do you mean, would it be better if we played a 4 with them?
Yeah.
4 at the back with them. Well, for me, no. I feel like a lot of the games I've watched recently, it's been crying out for us to have them 2 in the positions that they know best. I think if you look at Matt Doherty, he's played his best football at wing back, and then there's obviously played the majority of his in the same role at Sheffield United. So, for me, I think that suits them, both them players. I think they can mostly play in a 4, but I think if you look at recent times and how well they've both done in the Premier League, a lot of their good footballers come playing as a wing back. So, no, I don't think that has hampered them or made them not as effective. I think, it just wasn't to be our night, which is really unfortunate.
In terms of the actual players who did get picked, was there a case for starting Robbie Brady and Shane Long? Had they done enough recently to get into the team, or even Jeff Hendrick?
For me, listen, it's a different one. The manager's obviously, he knows these players inside out. He sees them in training. But for me, I was surprised not to see a few, more the likes of Jeff Robbie, Shane Duffy, James McLean, Shane Long. It was a lot of experience that we had on the bench. But listen, the young lads have done well out in Serbia. They've earned the right to, play again. But yeah, listen, in hindsight, you can always look at these things, but it was a surprise to me, yeah.
The value of experience in an occasion like that against Luxembourg, what is that? Like on the field, what would we have seen that would have been different from those players, do you think, Stephen?
I think for me, it's just been there and done that, really. If you look at the lads that we have in the squad, they've sort of seen everything in international football, highs, lows, low moments and really, really successful moments. So, yeah, listen, they still have an influence around the camp, but, sometimes maybe it does help the younger lads if there's a couple of more of them experienced lads on the pitch just to sort of keep them going when things get tough. But like I said, it's all in hindsight. Steve is the manager, he picks the team, he's trying to get his best team out there. I know he's very keen on players to be playing football, but, there is also that argument that, if these players that aren't playing maybe at Premier League clubs, if they're at Championship clubs, would they be playing every week? Of course they would, but, in terms of this day and age and the year we've had in football, there's been that many games, I suppose, having that much practice is vital as well.
Yeah, in retrospect, like mixing the team up a little bit, because afterwards he said that some of the players had difficulty playing the 2 games back to back because they're not playing football. In retrospect, making more changes and freshening it up a little bit for some of those players for the Luxembourg game might have given you a bit more chance to bring a bit of energy and intensity to the performance.
Yeah, I think he maybe, had considered maybe making a few more changes, but obviously a lot of the lads have done well over in Serbia, and he probably, felt that they deserved a chance as well. So, like I said, listen, it's a completely different outlook. If we win the game, there's no questions asked. There's always going to be these questions asked when we lose a game like that. So, it's something the manager will have to look at going forward. But I think in terms of the players, they know they'll be, I know they'll be hurt, and everyone knows they'll be hurt, and they'll face a lot of criticism over the last few days. And all they can do now is really rally together, because it's only them really in there that can change it. And, I know the characters in there will be desperate to just win a game on Tuesday night and hopefully, get us back into this group as best we can. We're going to need a couple of massive results, which, as a country we've been capable of doing before, and hopefully, fingers crossed we can do that again, even just to get ourselves competitive in the group again.
We played a clip of Stephen Kenny earlier on, and he was analysing the first half in particular. He said that the Luxembourg centre-backs and their forwards were only about 25 metres apart. Essentially, and then he went on to explain that he wanted our forwards to run in behind them to kind of stretch them and create a bit of space. When that's not happening, when the team aren't functioning the way they're supposed to be doing, is that because the players don't fully understand what the game plan is? Is that because they're so low on confidence that they can't trust making that run in behind because they don't think the ball's going to come? Like, I guess I'm asking, we have to apportion some responsibility here. What's the share of responsibility that's the players, and what's the share of the manager not getting his vision for what he wants his forwards to do?
Well, I think the manager will have had a game plan, and then it's up to the lads to go out and replicate that on the pitch. I think sometimes in games when players are short of confidence, I think if you watch any game of football, a team or a player that's low confidence tends to come towards the ball rather than run long away from it, because he wants to get a feel for the ball. And I think sometimes that was the case the other night. Everyone wanted to touch, everyone wanted to come towards the ball. And I think, probably the first time we really ran in behind was, I think, when Robbie Brady got in the second half. And we created a decent chance to nearly get an opportunity in the box. So, yeah, listen, I think confidence plays a factor, but, you know, I think there's only so much the manager can do from the sideline once he's you know, set his team out and how he wants to play. And I think I'm sure they would have worked on that before the game, and you know, for whatever reason it just didn't work out, whether there was miscommunication or, like I said, that lack of confidence. You know, it's obviously hard to know, really.
It sounds to me like you think that the plan was sound, that tactically you can't lay too much blame at the door of Stephen Kenny.
No, listen, I think everyone's going to take a portion of it. You know, he's come out and said himself. You know, I think, you know, from my point of view, obviously people will say, obviously I've worked with Stephen over the years when I was younger, and because I know him. But for me, it's a difficult period for Ireland. I think, you know, I'm trying to look at it in terms of, you know, the whole scenario rather than just one game, because Stephen's been brought in. There was a massive sort of want to change the culture of Irish football, how we play. You know, he's tried to do that. Obviously, the results haven't been good enough. That, you know, it is a results-based business, so that the pressure is going to come. But there has been signs where the type of football we've wanted to play, you know, people have wanted us to play for years, has changed. He's trying to get that across. He's obviously had the COVID, you know, and I'm not trying to make excuses for him or anyone, but, you know, a rebuilding job is basically what he has. If you know, we're being honest, there's a lot of new players, a lot of new faces, and a rebuild job at a club level sometimes takes a period of time, and that's when you get to work with players day in, day out to get your points across. You know, with the way the world has been and the camps they've had, you know, 1-2 days to prepare for these games. It's not going to happen overnight, especially with, you know, looking like he wants to inject a lot of youth into the squad. So, listen, the result the other night, the lads will know themselves, no matter what formation, how they play. We've got better players, we're a better team. We should be beating the likes of Luxembourg. But I think on the whole of his time and the process, you know, you can see the change he's trying to make. It's what people have wanted in terms of the public, you know, and at the minute we're not getting the results. It'd be a completely different situation if we had public good results under our belt. And, you know, I'm trying to look at it from that kind of perspective, because I know when a new manager comes in, when a rebuild starts, and sometimes it can be difficult.
So, look, you have obviously a really interesting perspective on this as somebody who came from the League of Ireland and made it all the way to the Premier League and played 50 times for your country. So what do you think we should do? Because, like, we framed this as a battle for the soul of Irish football, where there is definitely a rump of people who are very reactionary and want us to go back and hire a big-name manager and put all of the FAI's money in the pockets of a big-name manager to try and fix this scenario, like whoever it is, right? Or do we continue to invest and take our time and try and build towards something that has a vision for what the future should look like?
I think that's the big question now, isn't it? Because, look, a change in culture, a change whatever, it takes time. And football is results-based, and we want to qualify. We're a country that wants to qualify. Our fans deserve to qualify for every tournament, because, you know, the experience you get when you go as a player, when you know the Irish fans are there, is the best thing you'll ever experience. The players want to go. You know, but at the minute, it does happen to a lot of teams, a lot of countries. It is a rebuild phase, and there's no getting away from that. You know, that there is a lot of younger lads coming through, and, you know, it's not really the question for I think the FA now have decided to give Stephen the job. He's come through the 21s. That's the vision they've gone for, and I think the next camp in September will really, you know, decisions will be made after that in terms of where we are after that. Because if we've got no chance at all of qualifying, then I'm sure it'll be looked to getting these young lads in, giving them, you know, as much experience as we can, because we need them to be as strong as a squad and as a unit to go and qualify for the next tournament. So, you know, I think at the minute, listen, it's disappointing. There's a lot of, you know, afterthought after such a disappointing night. But I think September will tell us a lot. And I think if the FAI are backing Stephen to go and you know, change this culture and you know, in a way, it's sometimes, you know, what people want, it's not always as easy just to flick a switch and it changes like that. So I think after that, it'll either be, we restart and go with the young lads and get them experience and get them ready for, you know, the next Euro campaign, or it'll probably be, like you said, an experienced manager comes in and we revert to type a little bit.
Which would you prefer to play under?
I suppose nowadays, the way football is, everyone is playing this new sort of style playing out from the back. For me, you know, I've played for obviously Burnley, where we had a successful way of playing, and obviously in my time at Ireland we had great success playing that way. It's such a difficult question for me. I like win. Everyone likes winning. People want to be part of success. People want to qualify, and for me, you know, you play the way you need to with your players to get the best out of it. At the minute, it's just not happening for us in that final third. You know, whether these players just need more experience at that level, that remains to be seen. But, you know, like I said, there have been real good signs in a lot of the games and a lot of the performances. Just seems to be that we can't get that vital goal at that vital time. So at the minute, you just got to support Stephen, you know, in how he's doing it. You know, like I said, it's a difficult night the other night for him, difficult night for the squad. But if you know, the mantra when he came in was to change the culture, change the style, and bring through a lot of sort of the youth, then, you know, you're going to have to give him patience and give him time. You know, if it's you know, qualification now and having a real go, then I wouldn't be surprised if you see a lot of the more experienced boys come back into the team and you know, have a real go.
On that point that you make about the new style of football that maybe is going to be implemented, it's going to favour technically gifted players over other players in the Ireland setup. From what you've seen at all levels of Irish football, is there enough emphasis put on the technical aspects of football to ensure that these pathways are at least some bit in operation at the moment?
Yeah, there is. You know, obviously I'm doing my own coaching badges at the minute with the FAI, and I can see, you know, right through the ages of how we're doing the courses of how, you know, that new style has been implemented even at the sort of under 15, 16, 17 level. And I think that's the way, you know, if they want to do that within the first team, they've got to do it right the way through. And, you know, from what I've seen, it's all in place, you know, from you know, under 21s right the way back. So, yeah, they are trying it. Like I said, it's not gonna happen overnight. You know, it's a completely different way to the way we've been playing. I know a lot of players play that way at club level, but, you know, club level is a completely different game to when you come away playing international. So, yeah, no, listen, you know, from my experience of what I've seen with the FAI, doing my own coaching, you know, that's the sort of format that all the youth team and all the younger sides are doing. And I think you've seen the rewards in that with when Stephen was in with the 21s. It's just now about giving the players in the first team, especially younger lads coming through, time to develop. You know, they're going to develop at the clubs, they're going to become better players, and it might just take a bit longer of a rebuild than maybe was anticipated.
So, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater just yet, but if things don't turn around, maybe we should look at being a bit more Burnley than trying to become Norwich.
Well, listen, like I said, it's going to depend on the FAI themselves, you know, what blueprint they want going forward. You know, obviously at the minute they're looking to move with sort of the way football is going. You know, but like I said, results are going to dictate that. And, you know, there was a lot of people delighted to see this new style of football come in. But when the results don't come, people turn quite quickly. And that is the problem. You know, it's international football, and these tournaments don't wait around for anyone. So, you know, that's why it's such a difficult result the other night, because I don't think even after the games before that, I don't think anyone really seen it coming. I think everyone would have earmarked this game as being the one to kickstart the sort of the new era in the campaign, because although we hadn't won a game previous, there had been signs, and there were real signs in Serbia of, you know, things changing, scoring 2 goals away from home. And I think it's just, you know, a real setback that no one really expected. So, you know, I'm sure there'll be a lot of soul searching from Steve and the team, and everyone will, you know, be looking to improve, you know, come September.
I have one last question, Stephen. Have you been in a team where we've been where we've just gone through a period where we just can't score, where, like, we're missing really good chances a lot? I know we scored the 2 goals against Serbia, but that's kind of, like, if you go back to the Slovakia game and the chances we had the other night, like, the confidence is so low.
Yeah. Listen, I've played in teams, you know, throughout my career where there's times where the ball just doesn't go in for you, as a team, and the longer that run sort of goes, the more stuff seems to, you know, go against you. You know whether a team just defends unbelievably well, or, you know, a marginal offside rule, a penalty you could have had that wasn't given. So at the minute, you know, like I said, you look at the penalty in Serbia tonight, we aren't getting the rub of the green, you know, and everything just seems to be coming down against sort of Stephen in the squad. Listen, it's been the problem since you know, Robbie obviously left. You know, to replace a goal scorer like that is nigh on impossible, really. You know, we've obviously had some really good strikers, Johnny Walters, you know, Kevin Doyles of this world, David McGoldrick was doing great at the time, and they're hard to replace as well. You know, there's not many John Walters around there who can just you know, come into a team. So, you know, a lot of these strikers are still plying their trade, you know, at club level, doing well, but still finding their feet a little bit. So, you know, it's going to take time. It's not just going to happen overnight. You know, I'm obviously with Troy Parrott at Ipswich Town at the minute. He's on loan, you know, playing with myself. And, you know, he looks a real talent, you know, real appetite for the game. You know, as an eye for goal, you know, his work ethic is unbelievable and a really talented player. But he's 19 years of age, you know, years of age. You know, he's still learning his way. He's still coming in every day to learn, to get better. And, you know, I'm sure over time he will become a great player for Ireland. But like I said, it's you know, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. And you know, maybe in another way, you know, other lads will have to start chipping in with goals. You know, obviously it was good to see Alan Brown get one the other night. Yeah, listen, that's obviously something for the management to look at. But, you know, like I said, these lads will get better and hopefully can be a lot stronger going forward in the future.
And just the last one for me, Stephen, just on that point that you mentioned there about Troy Parrott, maybe a more positive note to finish on. You're seeing things that nobody else is seeing from him at the moment. A lot of confidence has been placed in him, or a lot of hope has been placed in him from a national standpoint already. Yeah. Is that hope well placed, in your opinion?
From what I've seen, I think he's a really talented player, really talented, really good lad as well. You know, really down to earth. You know, he's come into Ipswich, really nice guy. Everyone really gets on with him. Works unbelievably hard in training and on the pitch on a Saturday. Has a great will to win. He's technically been very good since he's been at our place, from what I've seen, and has a good eye for goal. He's been really unlucky not to score more than he has for us. You know, but yeah, definitely one for the future that you'd expect to go on and have a good career. But like I said, he's still a young lad. He's still learning. Still comes in every day asking questions and wanting to learn, which is great. So yeah, definitely one for the future.
Stephen, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Oh, no problem. Take care.
Stephen Moore giving us his thoughts there this morning. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. It's 43 minutes past 8. We were obviously at the Aviva on Saturday night for commentary with Nathan and Stu Byrne on commentary. Stuart did a great on-the-whistle takedown of the match, which has got a huge response. Here's a taste of his reaction.
How much pressure internally do you think Stephen Kenny is going to be under?
I think it's inevitable, Nathan. It's inevitable. There's been pressure, a lot of pressure, and a lot of talk about the Irish soccer team. You know, pretty much since he's taken charge, isn't there? Really, you know, the whole video gate thing was just an indication that there's certain courts didn't want them in charge for whatever reason, and didn't even want to give them an opportunity. I don't think they're going to go away now. You've got a situation as well now where the new chief executive wouldn't know too much about Stephen, probably looking at it from a different point of view. We've got a big gap now until we play Portugal, so we've got a lot of questions to be answered. You know,
well, it's 10 games now, no wins. 8 of those games Ireland didn't score in, 3 goals in 10 games. Tonight, 1 chance for James Collins in the first half that you would call clear cut. Aside from that, basically feeding off scraps. He's in a fight to save his job.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he'll probably say that as soon as you get the manager's job, you know, the Ireland international job, you're in a fight to save your job. You're always under pressure, you know. But definitely something is, you know, I think there's going to be huge pressure on it now. I'll go back to it. I think the honeymoon period was over, so the start of this week was always going to be a huge week. A lot of people were saying we need 4 points from 2 games. We've gotten none, you know. So he's under huge pressure. There's no doubt about it. Simple as that.
Yeah, Stu Byrne there giving us his thoughts on the game at the weekend. And so it's interesting Stephen Ward was there. I was looking at the team that played Italy, that beat them in Lille. And Ward obviously played left back in that one. Hendrick, McCarthy, Brady and McLean were the midfielders. Like, do you remember coming away from the Euros and thinking that midfield quartet, particularly Brady, Hendrick and McCarthy, they've kind of hit a peak now, they're going to use this, this is going to be them, they're going to be our midfield now for the next 4 years at least. They'll get us to the next Euros where there'll be games in Dublin. It's going to be very exciting. Remember that? And like, look, they haven't delivered. They haven't delivered enough for Ireland, and they haven't been fit enough, really, the three of them, often enough. And I don't know how often those trio would have played together since where they were available. Like, that's that generation of players who every single one of them needs to make it because there's not enough of them.
Yeah, just about to make that point that that's the problem, is that there's always going to be a chance that the player goes out of form. There's always a chance that there's going to be 2 or 3 that suffer the same fate. And with a player pool like Ireland have at international level of that quality, that would be detrimental to your chances of success, and that's exactly what's after happening. Like, I mean, it wasn't a bad generation of player. Like, I think it gives you hope that if somebody within the FAI says that things are going in the right direction, it does have to give you maybe a little bit of hope, because that isn't a terrible, terrible generation of player. There will always be the accidental genius who comes through at Irish football. It's just a question of whether or not there's going to be enough of them, and it just seems that there isn't.
Yeah, and so then you spool forward to the tennis ball, the night of the tennis balls. Our midfield that night is Conor Horan, who scores, Glenn Whelan, Jeff Hendrick, and Robbie Brady and James McLean are playing. It's kind of a 4-3-3. It's kind of a 4-5-1. David McGoldrick is up front. Like, you know, the fact that Brady's not playing enough football at the moment to get in the team, to be the first name on the team sheet, is that the manager's fault? The fact that Jeff Hendrick isn't playing and isn't, like, so he was warming up the whole time during the Luxembourg game and didn't get a look in. You know, are you massively critical of Stephen Kenny for not picking these players, or are you saying he can't just pick those players because that team didn't qualify from that group for the Euros, and now we're trying to qualify for a World Cup?
Well, I would assume that if you're a manager of the national team and this is your new gig, everybody gets a clean slate to some extent. That you're certainly judging Jeff Hendrick on what you've seen as manager rather than what you've seen as an under-21 manager and being essentially a spectator for the senior team. Like, I can't imagine there were previous performances under Mick McCarthy that would weigh more heavily on Stephen Kenny's decision-making than what he's actually seen in training. So I presume the Jeff Hendrick decision was based on what he'd seen. And maybe he just thought that Jeff Hendrick wasn't in his best 3 midfielders for the last couple of games. Now, in hindsight, that doesn't look like a great decision. It looks like that sort of experience was exactly what Ireland were missing in midfield. We heard Seamus Coleman talk about that. Is Jeff Hendrick the type of person to go missing in a game, who doesn't go showing for the ball and isn't encouraging in his play? Maybe he is, but the thing is, he's smelling like roses now after what happened on Saturday night by dint of the fact that he just wasn't involved. But you still think that a person who is involved quite a lot for Newcastle United throughout the course of the season should probably be getting in ahead of maybe 1 or 2 of that Irish midfield. But it's about more than that, and Stephen Kenny, like, he is still the guy who is making the decisions. He does know something, believe it or not, about how players are going, and he's clearly seen something that suggests that Jeff Hendrick isn't the starter.
And so Hendrick, in Euro 16, I'm looking up the ages here, Hendrick was 24, Robbie Brady was 24, and James McCarthy was 25. Where's the 24-year-old midfielder who's replacing him that next 4 years on? And where's that group of players? That group of players has disappeared. There's been
Cullen is the one.
A number of lost generations. Yeah, okay. And Cullen, who had to leave the Premier League to go, and fair play, it's exactly the right thing to do when you're not getting into the West Ham team, is to go and play football in Belgium. And it's been great for him because he's beginning to get those. But so he's the one that we have. And
maybe Callum Robinson as well, you could put into that bracket as well. Of that intervening years of players who aren't as young as the under-21s that Stephen Kenny managed.
Yeah. I'm talking specifically about the midfielders who might be able to influence the game, but I thought Robinson was actually decent. I thought that he created that chance that if James Collins scores, then all of a sudden the whole texture and the mood changes, and a bit of confidence seeps into the team, but the confidence is so brittle. There's one last point that I just want to make on this, is that the question about, we were able to produce great players in the 80s and 90s. We also were absolutely, utterly reliant on the granny rule to backbone the team. Like, it has been the stated policy of the FAI to get players under the granny rule, and the players under the granny rule who we should have had for this team at the moment
are obviously outrageously good.
Yeah, here's the thing, like, that the best players would have been in the granny rule. And do you think that if we got those two players playing for us and they had 30 caps each and we were going to the Euros in the back of their performances, that a load of other players would have decided to play for us too? What's the likelihood of somebody who's on the fringes, what's the likelihood of Patrick Bamford declaring 3 years ago? And then all of a sudden this thing looks completely different. Like, when the granny rule stopped working, we did not have a plan B. So when Rice and Grealish fell away, because at some point England were going to fight back, funnily enough, they did, and it looks like as a strategic weapon, we did not have an alternative. So the days of us being able to hoover up Andy Townsend and Cascarino and Ray Houghton and, really important players for us, Mark Lawrenson, like, backbone of a team that was capable of competing at international level, that's gone. We're not doing that anymore. We're not able to do that because there's proper competition for these players at an earlier age. The scouting gets better, like it has got better at Premier League clubs and Championship clubs, where they're now scouting globally. The English FA are scouting their own players and saying, do you have other qualifications? Yeah, we're going to take you. And the agents all know that they're going to make more money playing for England than they would playing for Ireland. So that part of our team has been hollowed out, and we have not had a massive investment in underage football in Ireland over the last 2 decades to counterbalance that. And
that goes for all the other managers as well. This isn't necessarily a point that just pertains to Stephen Kenny. I mean, there's, like, Mick McCarthy's time would have been more successful had the granny rule been more successful. So this isn't necessarily, distracting from Stephen Kenny. It's something that has been a factor for every manager, and every manager has suffered as a result of that granny rule being less effective.
Yeah, they could have picked them, They could have picked them.
Like to Martin O'Neill and Roy Keane, I guess. But for Mick McCarthy in particular, like, I think, in fairness, you got to say that he would have been helped had he had Declan Rice, for example. That midfield player would make a transformative impact. Like, that's the thing. The game was decided on Saturday night by a Champions League player scoring on a Rochdale keeper. One player can transform an entire team at international level, and you can forget about Grealish and Bamford. Had they just edged Declan Rice in, who was the closest, let's not forget, it would look different. But what was it? What are we, an hour and 23 minutes in, and it's taking this long to get to Declan Rice? But I'm specifically talking about the granny rule not working as a policy. And when you put all your eggs in the granny rule basket, at some point the basket's going to break and the eggs are going to be scrambled. 087 9180 180 is the WhatsApp number if you want to get in touch with us this morning. You can, of course, tweet us at Off The Ball, and the hashtag is OTBAM. Loads of you leaving comments on the YouTube stream as well, and we'll come back to those in a couple of minutes' time. The performance rankings from Gillette coming in a couple of minutes too, where, funnily enough, we're going to be talking about rugby and football. A reminder, OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Now, we want to talk about the Women's National League, which started over the weekend, and we're starting with one of the goals of the weekend. This goal made it 3-3 in the last few minutes of the game between Cork City and, sorry, I missed who we scored against, but we've got Becky Cassin with us. Becky, Galway. Becky, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, how are things?
Yeah, good. So you moved from Wexford Youth to Cork and scored a screamer at the weekend. So not a bad start to the weekend for you.
Yeah, definitely not. No, it was a nice way to cap off the weekend. A good result away from home as well.
The start of the new league season obviously has had a fair bit of interest and a fair bit of hype about it. Is that something that you've noticed as well?
Definitely, yeah. The last few years, I'd say the last two in particular, the league has grown big time. Even just like the attention on social media and things like that, it's been huge. What difference does that make in terms of even just the conversations that you're having and the fact that everybody over the course of the weekend on Twitter has seen your goal? Yeah, it does. It makes a big difference. I think even the fact that, we're talking this morning about it, and I think Kylie Murphy was on the show a while ago as well. It's really good just to get the attention
have more people aware of it, I suppose, aware of the league and how good it actually is.
We're just showing the goal here.
Talk us through this, Becky. So you obviously picked the ball up in a central area. What are you thinking as soon as the ball arrives at your feet? Is it like that keeper's off our line, time to lob it?
Yeah, to be honest, I wasn't thinking very much other than there's not long left. We hadn't created many chances, I think, up to that point, so it was kind of hit and hope for the best, really.
Obviously, at that point in the game, it's not panic stations, I'd imagine. So are you almost thinking to yourself, let's try anything here and let's get ourselves back in this game?
Yeah, I think, we'd kind of come back into the game the few minutes beforehand, and we'd do a bit of shooting practice before training, me and a few of the girls, so I wouldn't be afraid of having shots from range. So I thought, I'll have a pop here and see how it comes off. I definitely meant it anyway. I've had a few people ask me, did I mean it? And I definitely did.
And is this something that you've tried before in training or anything like that? Are you trying to ping 30-yarders in training or in games before?
I can't say I've ever tried that one in particular or that it's ever come off. But we'd generally shoot from range in training. I'd probably lie that little bit deeper in midfield, so I rarely get into the box for shots, so I tend to work on when they break at the edge.
How are you finding life with Cork City? I mean, the move from Wexford Youths last year, it's obviously leaving a strong team in search of further silverware. In hindsight at this point, I guess the season's only a baby at this point. Are you hopeful about what the season's going to bring? Yeah, definitely. I've loved it since I've been down here. It's been unbelievable. The experience has been. I've learned so much in the last year. We went on a run of 5 wins, and that was huge for the club, the highest finish in 10 seasons or something like that. So, yeah, it was really big, and we've a really young but talented squad that I've no doubt we will go on and get silverware. It's just going to be a matter of time. But yeah, I think we had an average age of 19.4 years, and I was the oldest in the starting 11 on Saturday. So I think that says a lot to have come away with the result that we got, and it'll set us up for the season ahead. I saw this game doing the rounds on social media during the rugby on Saturday. Has it gone completely wild? Have people been in touch about it? Yeah, I've had a lot of people in touch, to be fair. It wasn't even our best performance either, that's the thing. So to have come back from 2-0 down and then 3-2 in the last few minutes was unreal for us, to be fair. How close did you come to getting a winner after that? I can't really remember now. I think it's all a bit of a blur after the goal, to be honest. It was parked the bus for a few minutes after that, but no, I think we were happy with the draw after that then.
I know you've all been playing each other in pre-season friendlies and stuff, but actual proper competitive football, how good is it to have that back? Oh, it's unreal. And we all know how lucky we are to be in this position, to be playing. So many people, there are a lot of teams in the country that arguably are on the same level as us, like junior football that aren't getting to play. So we understand the position that we're in to be playing week in, week out. It's really nice. It's really nice to be back playing competitively because, like you said, pre-season is one thing, but until it's actually worth something, it's nothing really. Talk to us just a little bit about that, will you, Becky, about the difference that it makes having a focus for a match at the weekend, because, we definitely have been talking to lots of people about trying to get some sport back, and even for the kids to go training, it just feels like it's going to be a very important tool in the country's general sense of well-being and mental health, and we're not really using it very much at the moment. Yeah, definitely. But even personally, I can't imagine not having football at the moment, because I've had it every year of my life since I was 11 or 12, and it's probably the same for most other people that play sports. So I can't imagine the effect that it's having on some people. It's definitely not being looked at, I think, in the way that it should be, in how important it is for everybody's mental health. But hopefully soon enough we'll get some sports back, and especially for kids in schools, to be able to play sports afterwards and have that release. It's just something to focus on, something to take your mind off the way things are at the moment. And then I presume in terms of the protocols, it's actually quite difficult to have the normal amount of crack that you normally have playing, but that under the circumstances it's absolutely better than nothing. Definitely, yeah. Just getting to see, your friends
we're in 4 days a week, 3 days a week training and a match on the weekend. Just to get to have those social interactions is huge. And obviously we're, social distance on the bus. It wasn't quite the same on the way to the game, but just being there, being in that environment makes a huge difference.
Well, listen, Becky, a class goal. Congratulations on it, and great to see the league up and running this weekend. Thanks a million for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Cheers. Becky
Cassin at Cork City. 3-3 draw, of course, with Galway in the WNL at the weekend, and we'll obviously, you can see that goal obviously all over your social media. Right, what are we at? Bang on 9 o'clock this morning. A reminder, OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. A jam-packed show for you on the programme yesterday on Off the Ball, reflecting on Ireland's shock loss. We're going to bring you a bit of David Myler and Kevin Kilban later on this morning. Gary Breen and David Snade also spoke with Joe. Those are all podcasted and on our YouTube channel. Here's part of what Kevin Kilban had to say.
If there was a crowd in there last night, I think you really would have, the players would have felt it even more. And you can flip it and say if there was a crowd there, that they would have got behind the team and it would have spurred the lads on. It might have hindered Luxembourg. But the longer that game went on, you just felt that the players were getting more and more nervous. There was a reluctance to take the ball. If you watch the first half in comparison to the second half as well, because there's no crowd, you can hear it. Everyone demanding the ball. There was screaming, there was shouting. The longer the game went on, there was no screaming and shouting. Everybody was going into the shell because there was a reluctance again to take possession of the football and start to try and pass forward and start to be creative. And that's what happens when you're playing against a side like Luxembourg and it goes against you. Look, hey, I've been there. I was in Cyprus, but you have to be quite honest and say this is the worst. At home against Luxembourg is the worst. And I'm not trying to justify what happened out there when we were in Cyprus because that was awful. It was an awful night for us. What happened to Steve Staunton after that game was horrendous. His family was hounded, and his dad was ill at the time as well. So all these sort of things, you can't. It was awful. Certain newspapers, need to hang their head in shame for what they did to Steve Staunton's family. But this result is way worse because of how it was and how it. No crowd there last night. I'd be looking at players can be expressing themselves a lot more. I've seen that since COVID. Players have been able to go out and play with a bit more freedom because they've not been hindered by the supporters that have been able to get on players' backs. I think it was a perfect opportunity last night that was missed against a poor side, and you can't make it up any more than that. Yeah.
I mean, that's the other thing is like the difficulty here is that you've got to be critical of how Stephen Kenny actually made changes within the game as well. Like, when he's given the analysis post-match, it's like, well, you needed to change stuff. You need to be able to be flexible enough within the game to, at half-time, make that change as well. So, in terms of the Ireland performance and where this ranks in our all-time list of shame, Owen, is this the worst? Is this worse than Cyprus?
I don't think so. I think Cyprus is definitely a worse result. Maybe Kevin's talking about the general importance of this defeat, and this is maybe a bigger setback than Cyprus was. But the Cyprus result, first of all, you've conceded 5 goals to a Cyprus team that is worse than this current Luxembourg team, with an Ireland team that is much better than this current Ireland team. So the gap is much smaller in this instance, and the scoreline is worse. So this is clearly not as bad as Cyprus. It is still horrendous, though.
How bad has our lives become where we're like, no, it's not as bad as Cyprus. Honestly, this is, and we should do a couple of minutes on this. And you know what? I mean, I think that it's actually probably worthwhile. The Ireland team that night. So Kenny was in goals and never played again. So he carried can for Ireland being beaten 5-2. Our back four, Finnan, O'Shea, O'Brien and Dunn. So that's like Champions League winner John O'Shea, Champions League winner Steve Finnan. Midfield, Kilban, 100 and whatever caps. McGeady, probably our most creative player of the last 3 decades. Stephen Ireland, we all know about him. Clinton Morrison, Robbie Keane and Damien Duff. That team, I suspect, would beat the current Ireland team today. If they played as our lads today, I would still back that Ireland team in that Cyprus game. Give them a good manager, obviously, to beat the team that we had out against Luxembourg the other night.
Yeah, that Cyprus result was definitely the worst one of my lifetime. Like I don't remember Liechtenstein. I don't remember Macedonia, like I would say Liechtenstein is maybe the comparison there, isn't it, between the two? Like, I mean, it's not just getting beaten by Cyprus, it's like it's 5-2. Let's not forget the scoreline. Now, we're not going to get into describing that Cyprus team as no great shakes this morning. That's probably not wise. The Luxembourg result is a terrible result.
There's no dressing it up.
That's the bottom line.
There's no dressing it up. People very angry in our YouTube comments that we're not going hard enough here on Stephen Kenny. What's the point? Like, what is the point? You know, he didn't do a good job. The team got beaten. It's a disaster from the qualification perspective. But like, the result has been in the post. This stuff has been brewing for a long period of time. Right, we're going to take a quick break here on OTB AM. We're back with the Gillette performance rankings.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station. Off the ball.
And he also said to ask him about the Hummer golf buggy I saw him driving in Portugal.
Yeah, well, the Hummer golf buggy, it wasn't mine, it was a friend of mine's. And I rented his place, and that was his buggy to get about. So, yeah, it was interesting. I was trying to keep my head down at times, but it was a little bit, yeah. Not sure what Roy Keane would have made of it.
Off the ball. Weeknights from 7 and weekends from 1.
This is OTB Sports Radio, live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
Tom Watson, you're welcome to Golf Weekly.
Hey, this is going to be fun. Very happy to say European captain and, of course, 3-time major winner Padraig Harrington joins us.
Today's special guest on Golf Weekly is Lee Westwood.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I'm honoured and delighted.
Let's bring in Paul McGinley, who joins us now. Paul, you're very welcome.
Shane Lowry, how are you keeping?
I'm good, thanks, yeah. Well, I'm as good as I can be.
The biggest names in golf and Ireland's best golf podcast, Golf Weekly, now exclusively available on Patreon. Go to otbsports.com/Golf Weekly to sign up now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Right, some of the comments coming through. I'm just going to, they got deleted there. Where's it gone? It's not a culture war. People look at his record outside the League of Ireland, for example, Dunfermline and Ireland so far. He's not good enough a manager to inspire players to play attractive football successfully. So you want somebody who's ranting and raving, and so you basically want Roy Keane on the sideline. That's what John wants, to inspire players, because it's about that. It's not about telling them how to play and giving them the information that they need to play. It's always those types of managers who are inspirational, who decide things. Back Kenny, or else we were playing Stone Age football forever. Remember Cyprus and Liechtenstein, says D. Muller. The blind defence of Kenny by the media is hilarious. I don't think anybody's blindly defending him. I certainly don't feel like we're blindly defending him. We're not certainly blind to the mistakes. The substitutions weren't good enough. There was a case for layering on a little bit of experience in that team, and certainly there was a case for sticking with the 3 centre-backs, because James Coleman's not really a centre-back and you're getting him on the ball quite a lot. I can see the merits of that, and created a great chance in the first half. Chris Hughton is the outstanding candidate for the job, says John. Chris Hughton is the first name that I've seen mentioned where you're like, okay, we should have a think about this. Like, it's worth having a think about Chris Hughton as the Ireland manager. I don't see Neil Lennon as an Ireland manager who is going to change anything in the short or long term. Gavin Bazzouni was excellent, no need to worry. Lads, most decent managers wouldn't touch the Ireland job with a barge pole, which is probably where we are at in world football at the moment. It's 8 minutes past 9 here this morning on OTB AM, the Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball. If you want to get in touch with us, we'd love to hear from you. The hashtag is OTB AM on Twitter. You can get us on Instagram, you can get us on YouTube, and you can listen to us just as a radio show if you want. Just tell your smart speaker to play OTB Sports Radio at any stage of the day or night, and we'll come on for you. Now, it is time for the Gillette OTB AM performance rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performance was just lacked that intensity.
So, for anybody who's just joining us or has never seen this before, we start in the red and we finish in the green, and red is bad, and then there's a mediocre one in the middle, which is amber, and then there's the green, which is like, yay, these are good performances, or this is a good week, or this is a good time to be in that section. And, you know, Owen, it's a difficult job, but someone's got to be in the red this week.
This is actually the easiest categorisation of poor versus good performances in the history of the Gillette performance rankings. Number 5 is Stephen Kenny in the red. We'll go through this. In the red, it also is Munster. At amber this week is France. I think France are eternally amber until they go ahead and win the 2023 World Cup. The Kenny haters are in the green. People who were anti-Stephen Kenny from the first moment, congratulations. Very much in the green this morning, and Leinster in the green. So the red, I guess, is where we should start with Stephen Kenny, and maybe the point that you made a couple of moments ago, I'm not sure, did it come in from a listener, this idea of maybe Stephen Kenny's substitutions, which is the first place maybe to start when people are looking for tangible information with which to bash him. Like, they probably haven't been good enough. Has the system been good enough, and has he actually second-guessed himself with the 3-5-2 is a question that maybe a lot of people will have as well over the past couple of days. No matter what way you paint this, and I'm at pains to point out here that nobody's sitting here this morning saying Stephen Kenny's doing a good job as Ireland manager, because maybe some of the commentary around the show this morning seems to think that that's the case. We should be at pains to point out that he has not done a good job so far. The proof that is in the pudding is not good so far, and I don't think you can make a case for him to be anywhere other than the red at the moment. He's under severe pressure and will be after the next international break. And I think when Nathan put it to Stewie Byrne earlier on in that video that Stephen Kenny is fighting for his job, I think he's bang on with that. That's exactly the situation he's going to be in once internationals resume.
Yeah, look, it's a really difficult situation. You can't credibly come back for this without having a big uptick in performances really quickly, and Portugal are next. And look, Portugal, we saw, I don't know if everybody saw Cristiano Ronaldo storming off and throwing his captain's armband on the ground because he thought that he'd scored a last-minute winner in Serbia, which probably would have been good for Ireland in the long run. But anyway, largely irrelevant at this point. And that Portuguese team are pretty good. Diego Jota looked pretty good. Bruno didn't start the first game. He started the second game, but they didn't need to start him in the first game. Well, they were a bit arrogant in that first game and nearly got caught. So you would expect Portugal to beat Ireland, and the way that England beat Ireland pretty well, notwithstanding the motivational video, that's what good teams do to bad teams, and at the moment we are a bad team.
It's as blunt as that, really. Like, the one thing that maybe you can point towards is that Ireland did well against Serbia and did well against Slovakia when the stakes were at its highest, and it'll feel like the stakes are pretty high for that Portugal game, and maybe they'll come out swinging, but the quality isn't there to beat Portugal. The positive that you might give to, or that you might predict over the next few months, is that if Ireland do manage to finish this campaign well, which is winning the majority of the games they're supposed to win, which again, I'll go back to my point of getting 12 points against Azerbaijan and Luxembourg. If they can get 9 points from the remaining 3 games against Azerbaijan and Luxembourg, and maybe get something off the big 2, then all of a sudden the conversation is about the young players and how much they're going to bring to Ireland over the next couple of years. And the question will be, who do you want to nurture them and take them on to the next European qualification campaign? And in that scenario, you could see a case where Stephen Kenny stays on.
What's the minimum points tally that you get to from this point, do you think, where the FAI can credibly say, actually, you know what, we've seen enough here. The green shoots are real, and we've seen enough?
I think it's very hard to put a number on that, but if they're in double figures come to the end of the campaign, the FAI could credibly make that case. They might make the case, but less than that anyway, and there might be people there will definitely be people who will disagree with it completely. I think no matter what happens at this point, there will be people who will vehemently disagree with Stephen Kenny being kept on beyond this campaign. I think that ship has sailed. The idea that he can get everybody on board, supporters-wise, before the end of this. What is going to be very interesting, though, is what happens when the stadium returns. What is the litmus test at the moment for where the public mood is towards Stephen Kenny? Is it on social media, looking at the hashtag Kenny out, doing the rounds on Twitter? Is it our interactions with people who comment on our show? Is that like a good straw poll for us? Because I think from our comments, it's pretty evenly split. Like, I think the best indicator for that is what the sound in the stadium might have been on Saturday night, or what the sound in the stadium will be maybe in the home game against Azerbaijan, for example, if it's not a good result. That we don't know just yet. And there is an element of this being up in the air at the moment about what is everybody thinking, like what is the national mood. Like, it is interesting to see that Paul McGrath has come out yesterday and said that now is the time for Stephen Kenny to be sacked. How many people actually believe that, or how many people are actually on the side of the fence that suggest that, no, let's see this campaign out, but he definitely has to go? Because there are two different things, and there is a level of severity that differs amongst people, I'd imagine, when it comes to saying Kenny's not the man for the gig.
Yeah, and look, it's increasingly hard to make the case that they've done enough at this point to say they've got credit in the bank. The problem is that there isn't that much credit in the bank.
Yeah.
Like, if, for example, everything had gone in the sequence that it was supposed to go, and they had qualified for a tournament underage and they had done well in that tournament underage, then you might have been able to say, well, look, there is some credit in the bank there, and he's been forced to turn to those younger players a little bit earlier than possible. It's just that didn't happen, and we haven't seen that. So we saw really very clear signs of what his football philosophy was with the underage team, and the whole point that most of the world's best football federations get people in-house, build a culture, give them access to training and resources to turn them into better managers, and then bring them up when they're ready to go into the international, the main gig. Like, that looks like a good idea. That looks like a good philosophy. How we got there obviously was slightly tangled and chaotic compared with other football federations. But, like, shouldn't the next manager that the FAI appoint after Stephen Kenny be somebody in-house? Isn't that actually the right thing to do in the long run? That, like, this is the trend, this is what we're going to do? Or do you just keep going for Neil Lennon, Chris Hughton, somebody from outside? Like,
Yeah. Like
the Sean Dyche argument about Burnley earlier on that Stephen Ward was making, like, Burnley had a way of playing, it was very successful. There is more than one way to skin a cat. Like, is there a variation of how Burnley play football that the Irish football public are going to want to watch, that they're going to get behind, show up and fill the stadium and tune in big numbers on telly when the team plays? Is that what we want?
If they win, like, the conversation soured around Irish football, not just because of the style of football, but because the style of football was resulting in very few qualifications for tournaments. What is it, 2 in 7? It'll be 2 in 8 now after the end of this qualification campaign that Ireland have qualified for. Like, it's a different thing. If you're telling me that the Burnley style will guarantee qualification for tournaments and success relatively at those tournaments, then of course everybody will go for that. But this is different. Like, the conversation is not about being pleasing on the eye. The question is about being effective. And there is a school of thought out there that being the old school way of playing just wasn't that effective. There were a couple of fluky moments here and there and a couple of really good moments, but actually there was an idea that if you played in a different manner that was more possession based, that played maybe more to the strengths of the team, which I guess is up for debate, you would get more qualification for tournaments. You would have a higher success rate results-wise. It all comes back to results. That's what everybody wants. That's the one thing everybody can agree on. And like, I think up until the weekend, I didn't really understand why people would necessarily want to maintain the way Irish football was going for the last 10 years, because it wasn't overly successful. It wasn't successful at all.
No, and look, I think that if... I think that the difficulty here is that you can go through all of the decisions that were made on a micro level and pick holes in them now because we got beaten by Luxembourg. Like, so I'm looking at the number of 90-minute games that James Collins has played, and in 2021 it's not a whole heap. He's finished 2 games, and he's not starting games that much at the moment, and he's your striker for literally a must-win game. And although he wouldn't say it was must-win, he knew it was must-win. Must-win in terms of his career and must-win in terms of the group. And, like, I don't know. Would it have been different if Shane Long had been up front? Would Shane Long have scored that chance? Would Shane Long have missed that chance? We'd be like, that's why Shane Long shouldn't be starting, because Shane Long misses chances. I don't know. Like, it's just grim now from the management's perspective and from the fans' perspective, and what do you do next?
I certainly feel I'm kind of edging towards a Richard Cooper version of us here by saying, where do we go from here, and what does happen next? Like, but that is the question. Richard said it best. Where do we where do we go from here? Is certainly top of my head. Like, is it slightly encouraging to hear Stephen Ward say this morning that there is a style being implemented at under 15, under 16 level in Ireland that is relatively coherent when you compare it with under 21 and national level? Maybe there is like an identity that's starting to spill down from the national team at least. Like the next step is how that actually transfers into grassroots and maybe league football in this country, obviously, but like maybe they see Stephen Kenny as the end product of a system that encourages a certain style of play. But the problem is maybe that system just will take years to actually produce the players that Stephen Kenny can get the most out of. Maybe Stephen Kenny's just arrived too soon. That is another thing that's come into my mind.
Yeah, that definitely did strike me. It was like you had a fair idea of the talent coming through. Like you should have just sat there, 21 manager, reputation growing, getting, do 2 tours of duty, get all those players through so that when you come in, your players are 23, 24, hitting that level that Robbie Brady was at, that Jeff Hendrick was at in 2016. If you could tap him on the shoulder and say, don't take that call, just miss that call and take the gig next, because don't worry, it'll come.
The other eventuality here is that this style of play might not be the worst shout in the world eventually, but that Stephen Kenny isn't the right man to implement it. Which
I don't know. I mean, look, he seems to know what he's doing.
But that's just another possibility. Like,
maybe
we don't know for sure, and time will tell. But there is that. Like, there is a sense of no matter what side of the divide you're on, or what your opinion is on it, because it's not necessarily a divide anymore. There is a chance that you throw the baby out with the bathwater, even if you're pro or anti the current direction. That even if you're anti Stephen Kenny, are you anti the style as well, or can a better manager, manager implement it?
We need a progressive style of play that reflects how the modern game is evolving, and we need to find an Irish version of that. And the best person to do that seems to be someone who's come up through our system and who understands our football culture intimately, who is absolutely aware of every nuance of it, as opposed to an international manager who comes and says, oh no, this is easy, you just do this, this and this, because that's what I've always done and it's always worked for me. Like, that was fine to get us to the point where we were supposed to have something coming up underneath it, and it turns out we just don't. So look, the other alternative is to go out and get a load of plastic paddies who've got no connection with the country and who are like slightly better than the current crop that we have. Is that what everybody wants? I don't think so.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's not so much in the plasticity of the paddy, it's more to do with the quality of the footballer that they are, I think, which...
you take any out of plastic at this stage.
Well, as long as they're good at football, as long as they're very good, rather than being slightly better.
Plastic doesn't degrade. It's non-biodegradable. Oh, and it's bad for the environment.
It is. It's terrible for the environment. There is more Ireland coming in the performance rankings, believe it or not, once we get to green. Munster is also in red. To be honest here, like, I mean, we've been hearing from Alan Quinlan earlier on in the show. He said he felt a little bit sorry for Munster, and again, you can throw the where do we go from here line. It almost feels like that.
Where do we go from here?
My very sporting identity, like the guy, when Michael J. Fox is looking at the picture in Back to the Future and his family are disappearing one by one, I'm like looking at my hands this morning, I'm like, my sporting identity is just dissolving from my fingertips to my head at the moment. Like, because the identity of Irish football has been questioned, the identity of Munster rugby has been questioned over the last couple of days. Are you feeling smug as hell this morning, having set Munster up, basically, Ger, for the fall last week, coming on to this show and saying, yera, 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 Munster are the best team of all time. They're definitely favourites for this, rubbishing the 7-point spread that the bookies had put down relatively accurately at the time, and saying that Munster had a real chance.
We moved the spread from 7 to 5 with all our talk last week, Owen. I think you'll find that it wasn't just...
Your talk.
It wasn't just us. I see I was getting blamed for talking Munster up
correctly
on a load of social media tweets, generally from people I had muted or blocked a long time ago. So I wasn't that surprised. Incorrectly, absolutely incorrectly. This Munster team, on the back of the quality of the performances that so many of them had over the course of the Six Nations, Tyke Byrne in the conversation for Six Nations Player of the Tournament, but is like not the same player when he was playing for Munster against Leinster at the weekend. The other thing is that the last time Leinster played Munster, there was one move that Leinster had that got them through for a try that was a little bit fluky. Over the course of the game, you would have said that Leinster didn't actually deserve to win that game, And I wouldn't have been terribly surprised if Munster had won the last game. This game, I mean, right now we're going to talk about Leinster at the start, but like the thing that makes Leinster fans so excited is that they've got so much room to improve. If some of the passes go to hand, there's 3 tries scored in that first half, and probably a bit more. Like it was an annihilation, essentially, a 10-point annihilation. One of those performances where Leinster reward the players who've been playing in the Pro 14 and also are shorn of superstar talent, like genuine world-class talent missing because of injuries. And it's like not a big deal at all. That first half was so easy for Leinster, even though it finished 6-6. You're like, whew, geez, I don't know. I don't know. I don't feel in any way smug. I'm really disappointed because Leinster need Munster to be really good. Irish rugby needs Munster to be able to beat Leinster in a one-off, in a final, fairly regularly. Otherwise you do have to start questioning about the academy system and how that's going to work into the future for Ireland and doling out players to the 4 provinces so that they're competitive. And then that just gets me back to the whole point, like, what is Munster's identity? And if you continue to dilute that, then these games become meaningless. And if these games become meaningless, the competition for places in the Ireland team isn't as fierce as it should be, and it's not based on anything. And we're back to the same, oh, look, we're a quarter-final team in the World Cup.
I don't think that the dilution of any sort of rivalry was present at the weekend. I don't think that was the explanation.
But it doesn't feel like a rivalry anymore again because, like, you have to win occasionally. You've got to win one of these games occasionally.
But your point about the dilution was kick-started by the Joey Carbery trade. Let's not get away from that fact. And Munster should be a better province with the Joey Carbery trade. But yet you were saying that the rivalry is being diluted because the gap is growing between the teams. That gap should close once a player comes from the other province. So you can't have your cake and eat it when it comes to this argument.
I'm having my cake and eating it this week, Owen. Come on, tell me how you're going to fix Munster.
How am I going to fix Munster? Like, it does just seem like a very similar conversation to the Ireland conversation. Like, no matter what level you get down to, like, is the coach doing as well as he possibly could be? Is he the right man for the job? Are the players good enough? The academy structure is like very similar to the Ireland underage structures, and this whole conversation around like the hotbeds of Munster rugby, have they been eroded down through the years? Like the idea of Limerick as a rugby powerhouse, has that just firmly shifted in hurling's favour at the moment? Can those two sports tap into the huge talent that exists in that one city, or has that ship sailed at this point? Has Limerick hurling done such a good job that you're simply just not going to have enough? The West Cork development structures that seem to be kind of more important almost, or becoming more important to Munster rugby, how sustainable is that? Like the one thing you would say, just to give a positive note, is that someone like Gavin Coombs looked absolutely brilliant on Saturday night, and there are younger players coming through at Munster. If Joey Carbery's fully fit, maybe they look better, and maybe Craig Casey as a partner to him in the long term, that can actually be a hopeful thing. It's just demoralising when you think that the short-term improvements were being made and the results have not shown any improvement whatsoever.
All right, a reminder that obviously the performance rankings, while Owen officially unveiled them on a Monday morning, we solicit your views on social all weekend. You can nominate the good, the bad and the grand. That's what the middle one is. It's grand. From the sporting weekend to be with the chance to win a Gillette starter pack, and plenty of you have been in touch. We're going to get you the winner of those in just a moment. Who's an orange?
France. France are always an orange. Got beaten on Friday night. Not sure if you noticed against Scotland. I guess the product of that was obviously a certain trophy being awarded to the Wales national rugby team, the men's national rugby team. And
before you talk about the Welsh national rugby team getting a trophy, it is the second least prestigious trophy that was handed out over the course of the weekend, the trophy that Scotland got for beating France. Did you know that the Scots were on the pitch celebrating with a trophy? Did you see that?
I did see that.
The what? It's like, they get a trophy for beating France. Okay. That and Seamus Coleman, there is a picture doing the rounds of Seamus Coleman with his Player of the Match award from the Luxembourg game, which, like, he should keep. You know, there's definitely I think there's a recovery from this point. And when he's the Republic of Ireland manager and we've qualified for our third successive major tournament in 20 years' time, I hope he wheels that out and brings it to the players and says, this was my lowest moment, but look where I've taken Irish football since. But the second least prestigious trophy over the weekend was the one that the Scots got for beating France.
Do you know the name of
it? Gilles something or other, Johnny Scotland France Flovin Trophy.
The Owl Alliance Trophy. So it was first awarded in 2018, the centenary of the end of World War I, to commemorate the French and Scottish rugby players who were killed during the conflict. So it's a new thing, so you would be forgiven for not noticing until this year maybe, when everybody was watching Scotland against France. So I was flicking between Virgin and BBC. I think it was BBC who said, oh, there's Scotland celebrating with the trophy. That the Old Alliance Trophy didn't necessarily come to mind quite as easily as the Calcutta Cup, for example. So fair play to Scotland, and France just being France, really, to be honest. They could have killed that game off and got the win so easily at the end, and they decided to go for that extra try because apparently it matters.
Right, green. So we've done Leinster a good bit. So also in green is the Kenny haters, who have been. I would say lying in the long grass, but that would suggest they were hiding. They have not been lying in the long grass. They've been leaking stories and making stuff up, and just generally been anti-Kenny since before Kenny got the gig. So is that who you're talking about?
Yes, that's it. I think we kind of boxed them off nicely in the red already. We kind of, our two greens are the Kenny haters who've had a good weekend and might actually see the back of Stephen Kenny before the end of this campaign, and of course green Leinster, which of course is a beautiful way to finish up at 9:31 on this Monday morning, to say congratulations to you, Ger, and to your beloved Leinster on another hard-earned trophy.
Oh, the bitter word. You're such a good loser though, and I suppose you've got plenty of practice with these days.
God, the banter is just off the charts this morning. This whole friendly joshing between one team and another. It just doesn't get better than this, does it? Well done to Leinster. Getting smashed Saracens-esque towards the end of this Champions Cup campaign might actually bring a smile back to us.
Right, Air Force Union on Twitter says, the brutal Ireland, no need for explanation. The bad Munster losing again to Leinster. Fair going Wales, Six Nations champs. Fair play to Wales, Six Nations champs. Who could have predicted that? The good, Scotland's first win in Paris in 20 odd years. In fairness, Scotland were dynamic and kept going to the very end. And then even better, Leinster, #4 in a row. The good, Henshaw leading by example. The bad, O'Mahony, very quiet against Leinster. He did go off injured. Leinster are almost on a par with the Limerick Hurlers, a different level, says Jared on YouTube. And great game to finish the best Six Nations I've seen, and a nice cherry on top of that with Leinster's completing their 4 in a row, says Holman. But the winner this week is Mick Blake, who has Munster at the bottom. Even though I'm a Munster fan, nowhere to be seen when it mattered. Come on yourself, Mick. You pick up a Gillette starter pack, and stay tuned to our social over the course of the weekend. We'll give you the opportunity to enter that, and it's pretty easy, as you can see. You just nominate a good performance or a bad performance from the weekend, and we'll be in touch, Mick, about how you can become as clean-shaven and as well-groomed as both myself and Owen here. It's 9:33. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Here's what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio today. Our OTB Gold is Paul McGrath talking about the Charlton era at 1 o'clock. Keith Wood's State of the Union at 3. The Split Season, our GA documentary series at 4. And then OTB Gold is Jack McCaffrey talking with Joe Malloy. We're going to hear tomorrow morning from Louise Galvin. We also have Ireland versus Qatar to build up to. Hooray! Ireland versus Qatar. We're so excited about the friendly in Debrecen. You had to tell me where this...
It's in Debrecen, but here's the thing. When Qatar mysteriously arrive at the quarterfinals of the next World Cup, we can say we beat them in 2021.
Can we? Are you predicting an Ireland win here, Owen?
No, I'm not doing that.
Podcast OTB AM, search OTB AM wherever you get your pods. Hit subscribe on that, and we'll be in your earballs by 10 o'clock every morning. We're back live and online from 7 o'clock tonight. I want to play you this. David Myler and Kevin Kilban, very strong, talking about Ireland with Joe Malloy.
And as you get older, would you do things like a bucket list, or would you kind of reflect on your life and say, God, I need to make amends about that, or I haven't talked to that person in 20 years. Does all that stuff start happening to you as you get older, or not really?
It hasn't happened yet, but what I did do was I had a little box on my desk, and I used to write down what things I wanted to do and things I wanted to achieve. And that was scenario planning, actually, by a different method. It was really a dreamer's box, you know what I mean, if you like. And I have to say, some of the stuff when I wrote down, I look back on them, I thought, Jeannie Mac, how did I think I could ever do that? But like by having those down there as a kind of a semi-roadmap or a semi-goal to do something, and that was absolutely, how much of that was actually achieved, it seems beyond me. when I realised that the hotel that I had come from, a small hotel that needed an awful lot of work, you know, it wasn't in great shape at the time when we got it, you know. But I'm very proud I bought it from my mother, because I had 2 brothers as well. And my brothers and myself are very close. We ring each other every Sunday. We go, it's going great now. We can see each other as we've fallen asunder. But, you know, but we've kept that contact. And I think that my buying the hotel was the right thing for me to do, and it was the right move. So, like, from that moment on, and when you go in on that level, then, you know, dreaming on from there and looking back at what's been achieved. But it was never achieved without people, without teams of people over all the years. And people who were very loyal to me and very loyal to our business. And I think loyalty matters. I think loyalty matters in everything. Loyalty matters in sport. Loyalty matters in business. Loyalty matters across the board. Your loyalty will be exploited sometimes, but so what? Hey, that life, the shit happens, you know, and you put up with it and you move on. But you don't lose your faith in humanity because of it.
What about faith generally? I was listening to you and you were saying even back in the Wexford days, before going out on the pitch, everybody might say a prayer. So is faith, has that been a big part of your life throughout?
Yes, my parents were very religious, to be fair, and I'm a practicing Catholic, and I'm actually proud of it. I had a phone call from a man 2 days ago, Walter Gallagher, and we talk about the clergy and all the things. 50, 62 years in Africa, absolutely get a life to it. Maura Galloway's sister fought with Imelda Marcos in the Philippines, went up and wound up in back out in Chile, helping, you know, the underprivileged. All of these wonderful people that came from a religious background that were my next door neighbours. I was lucky. I grew up in a terrace of houses where we were in guards' houses, and we lived in each other's houses. If I was hungry and my mother was out, I went next door and grabbed the bread and just had bread and jam. I'm back hurling again against the wall. You know, it was an amazing kind of but they went off to do that. So I would say that I was obviously inculcated with that, and it was a great example. And you know what? It hasn't done me any harm. And yes, we didn't scream and roar in the dressing room going out. We knew what we had to do before we went out. We did well planned. And we were in the dressing room just before we went out. We said, right, let's say a prayer. And thank God we're here. And thank God for the opportunity. And it wasn't anything that, you know, that anyone rejected. Some of those lads mightn't have a belief in the word. But you know what? It certainly was something that I felt we'd taken care of physical fitness. We'd taken care. I knew we had what we'd done on the training side. We'd taken care of all of the mental side. We'd brought in a psychologist when it wasn't normal. We had done all our stats. We knew what we were doing. We knew what was the best we could possibly be. We had followed a fellow called Shooter Bumpa on the training manual of when he was leading the world leader at the time. We'd covered all of those things, endurance, speed and strength. We'd done all of that. So why wouldn't we take care of the spiritual side? Because, you know, why not? We had done everything else, so why not? And it wasn't tokenism, it was genuine. And I believe it helped us. You know, I do. And I believe it helped me. I remember the night before the Ireland final, I went to Our Lady's Island, which is a place not far from me, which is a place of pilgrimage in Wexford. And I went there when I knew there'd be nobody there. It was going to get dark. And I sat down on a bench. The sun was going down just, and I have to say, I sat on the bench and I never felt so calm in my life. And I made up my mind that I was going to be the calmest man in Croke Park the next day. That was my goal. That's what I was going to do. I had to keep my head, despite the crowd, despite everything else, and not be distracted. That was my job. It wasn't that I was going to Croke Park. I had a job to do in Croke Park. I needed to focus. What's the job I have to do? And now I'm a 1 in a row All-Ireland winning manager. So, you know, don't get over carried away with your achievements. 1 in a row is all it was. So I feel a bit of an imposter when you're talking about the Brian Cody's and all these fantastic managers, and Sean Boyle and Mick O'Dwyer and Kevin Heffern and Jim Gavin and all those fantastic managers that have done that for so long. I bow the knee to them every time. They're the men.
I hear you. But all the same, it was a great 1 in a row. And it's a 1 in a row which people remember for lots of reasons. You're one of those reasons. And I know you're very quick to give the credit to everybody else. And it's very genuine. So I accept that lots of people did great things, but you did a hell of a lot too. That's an interesting one, to aim to be the calmest man in Croke Park. Because you think, and especially in the 90s, I mean, now we're used to looking at Jim Gavin and like, Jesus, if he takes a sip of water, it's like, you know, it's a big deal. But I mean, your era, 90s, like managers are on the touchline. I think, you know, that era, like Paddy or Miko and, you know, the hurling managers as well. Like, you're roaring lads on the sideline, you're getting involved, you're riding the emotion of the game, I think. So you try to kind of center yourself and stay a little bit beneath that, obviously.
Look, I made up my mind when I was a manager that there was more to me than this, that this is not all about me. Because if I start thinking this is all about me, I'm going to make mistakes everywhere. If it's me worrying about fellas getting mad at me and whatever, if I'm going to start taking it all personally and trying to be all and end of all, I put a great team around me. I put Rory Kinsler. I only selectors that I would have with me were guys who'd work with kids. You know, the only fellas that I would select. So Seamus Barron was from Rathnewer and a great hurling man, and I played with him. And Rory Kinsler was at FCJ in Bentlody, a great coach and a great man, a good mind for the game. So I had the good team around me. I picked Sean Collier, a young lad who knew nothing about hurling, absolutely zilch, zero. But he was a young man. He had been boxer, kickboxer, very keen, and he was from my own parish. And he was going to do a job, and we did a job which we agreed. We agreed an entire, all of the various periodizations of the training regime. We sat down, went through it for hours, and then I would modify it to hurling as I saw it. And, you know, that kind of a team. And then we brought in Niamh Fitzpatrick. We had a vote on bringing in Niamh Fitzpatrick as a sports psychologist because I studied sports psychology for a while. And I went to America to a friend of mine called Bill Bowen in Rochester University, who was a dental researcher. And he was very helpful to me because his father actually was Nicky Rackard's doctor. And so he was one of the world's leading dental researchers and got awards all around the world, actually. So I actually went to those people because I wanted to know that I was going to be best in class. My own brother was a professional coach in England, and I was on to him and, you know, looking for other stuff. And we got all of the various things and kept using that information to move on. So we put together a good backup. So I'm just saying, without that backup, you couldn't do it. And if you were going to try and do it yourself and say, I know everything, I didn't know everything. I absolutely didn't know everything. And I learned a lot from the previous managers that worked before me from watching what had happened. So, like, they're a combination of all of those things. But I still say, and I'm not saying this to be falsely modest, you know, a good manager is important, but he'll never win you in All-Ireland. You have to be good enough yourselves. He might give you a wherewithal so that you can thrive in what you're supposed to be. Supposing you're playing, that you can be put in a position that you can thrive in and that you can play to your best of your ability and that so that you feel comfortable. So that's the kind of comfort zone. If each individual player has that, rather than sticking a fella in somewhere where it's going to make him unhappy. We had one player who was particularly unhappy about certain areas, but we felt he could deliver for us. He didn't think he wanted to play there, but eventually he did deliver, and only for him, we mightn't have won in All-Ireland. So, but a bad manager will lose you in All-Ireland.
Yes.
But a good manager won't necessarily win you one because you have to win it yourself.
And tell me that day, 223 to 215, an 8-point win against Limerick in that All-Ireland final. Did Liam Griffin manage to stay as calm as he was hoping to?
I absolutely did, to be honest.
Right.
Because I knew. Look, I was always of the opinion from training under kids. When you train kids in underage, you learn so much. I was playing in a club that had no tradition of hurling, zero tradition of hurling. And when I was a kid, our club were given walkovers in hurling. We couldn't play. I'd been a sub in a Wexford team that won All-Ireland in '65. I was starting to do my interest and I'd leaving, sir. And we won the under-21 All-Ireland, and I was on the panel. I was a sub. I came on in the All-Ireland intermediate final. So I'm 18 years of age. I'm not 19 till that September, and I'm playing at that level. Then my club entered a team into the hurling championship the following year, and I hitched from player, and we gave a walkover. Like, you know, what kind of a life was that for a young lad that's trying to develop it? So when I came back to my own club and I started training the team and playing in football, like Rosslare was predominantly a soccer place at that stage. So in my time, we had won some bits and pieces in football, but we were amalgamated with other clubs. So when you start, I felt we'd never have a GAA club unless we developed hurling. So we started from scratch with hurling. So when you start from scratch, it's a completely different thing to start from scratch with a crowd of people whose families have no tradition of hurling and who don't know anything about it. So to build through that, you have to learn how to control a game. I know that sounds crazy for people in hurling, but you can control a game if you know exactly what you're doing and who can do what. You can actually control a game. And I felt that would carry into adulthood. And why shouldn't it? So, but you needed like-minded fellas with you to be thinking on that play without having to educate them to think about that. So I just felt that controlling the game, I always felt either in control or out of control on the sideline. And I always had to be in control, that I was able to control as best I could the game. In my deck of cards were there, and I had to try and make sure I could control that. But I then had a good system in place with Rory Kinsler and Seamus Barron, and we had a system in place. We had no meetings on sidelines to discuss changes. Hey, when you're having meetings on sidelines to discuss changes, your ass is cooked. You know.
What was the system? What was the system, Liam?
for every single player we had on the field, I would go through that ad infinitum for hours. So if he breaks a leg, what do I do next? If the fella beside him runs into him and the two of them break their legs, what do I do next? Who comes on there and who's best suited for that? And who on this panel can play there?
Right.
Now, Rory McCarthy was a brilliant little hurler. Small man. I saw him murdered under high balls, lots of them. So what I said to Rory was in agreement with the other people. When I say I mean we, by the way. Okay? So, Rory, you're forbidden from going under a high ball, okay? You not be caught under a high ball, under any circumstances. Now, I knew that if I offered him €1,000 per game or to come out of that position, that he was going to opt for that. He, you know, but if you force a fella like that, so puck the ball out and it'll be okay. Now, if it goes down on top of a guy like that doesn't want it, it's not. Now, how can you use that to your advantage, right? And we only played with 5 forwards most of that year. We brought him to middle of the field, a very clever fellow, great sportsman all around, whisper his man out to the middle of the field, leave us room behind. Martin Storey had never scored against Offaly hardly in all his time, and we were getting no scores out of the 3 greatest halfbacks combination that we've seen, like Kevin Martin, Hubert Rigney, and Brian Whelan, right? They'd clean you out of there, right? And they played, I would say, they didn't even know themselves why the system they were playing. It was an automatic system, which is the best system of the lot, that covered for each other automatically and so forth. So how do you break that down? Well, Storey needed a room. So if we go out, he goes in, we could do all of those things. And we agreed how to do that for every position on the field, every time. And they went back and did it backwards, right? When you got to the end, you started and went backwards again. What happens if Damien Fitzhenry breaks a leg? What are we going to do about this? So, well, we're going to call in a sub who never played a match in the league. We needed to speed Damien Fitzhenry up a little bit, and he didn't like training too much. He wasn't fond of the endurance stuff, right? So we brought him out and played him wing back because he played outfield for his club. We brought him out and played him wing back, and we put the sub goalkeeper in for the entire National League. And we put him on. He was playing wing back and played very, very well in a lot of games because we were using him as an extra man when there's no such thing as an extra man because he covered behind our full back line who played from in front. So his job was, and he loved it. Get out. You know, we used to us standing between four lumps of timber. Like, if that ball breaks behind the full back line, it's your ball. So they know they can be satisfied if they go forward, the ball is behind you. So we're talking about getting into the minutiae right through everything. Now that's how and then you know that everyone's playing to that system, even though it's hurling and it's quick fire and it's fast.
Yes.
If you can get that system, you can get a game that you're able to kind of say, we're in control still. We're not going to fall asunder here. We're okay. And then all of a sudden, you know, it starts to come to you. No. So we actually said at the meeting before the All-Ireland final on the Wednesday night, I got up and said, right, okay, lads, we plan for everything. So the ball is thrown in after the first 5 minutes. Liam Dunn comes out to catch a high ball in the middle of the field. Martin Storey comes up the field. The two of them get knocked out. What do we do? Right. They're both carried off. What do we do? Dead silence. What, lads, tell me, what are we going to do? Right? Okay. Somebody says, bring on a bloody sub. That's it. Because they shouldn't be here if they're not capable of going on. So we're not beaten. We bring on 2 guys because we give them plenty of game time to people, and we bring on the 2 guys, carry them off, send them to hospital. Good luck. See you after the match. That's it. We just move on. No matter what happens, we deal with it. We don't, but we have to visualize it before it happens. I was big on visualization myself, and it wasn't my original thought on visualization. I was doing visualization without even knowing it myself. But when I went out to Bill Bowen, I looked up the Coaching Association of Canada. We started finding stuff, and I wanted to do stuff on the psychological side. And you could buy a paper, an academic paper on any topic in sport from the Coaching Association of Canada. €1 for a paper. I still have them here behind me. And you could pick them up and you could read it, academic, no bullshit, none of this Vince Lombardi, losing is not the only, it's not the only thing, or it's the only thing. These are all cliches. They don't do anything for a player, telling them not going to the dressing room door. Give me a tool to play with. Don't be giving me cliches. So we needed to give a tool. So we gave him tools, and we gave a tool on the visualization side of looking at what you can do. See the move before you make it. Make the move. Do those things. And the other thing then was we had to say, what's the mantra? What do we get in our heads? So I looked up at a thing at some stage, and I saw one for a guy called Fox, I think was his name. He won a gold medal, I think, in the Worlds or the Olympic Games for rowing. I think it was sculling, single sculls. But anyway, he was always nervous, and every time he went in the race, he was worrying, I'm going too fast, I won't let this line. And he started getting nervous. So your man, who was his coach at the time, you hold the boat to let these fellas off. He's just had a mantra. And the mantra was that this is what you're going to do. You can only win if you get the best you can be. And if you want to get the best you can be, You got to concentrate on your technique, okay? Now, don't be concentrating on who's behind you, who's in front of you. You just do the best you can do and the best way you can race, and that's it. And you take a stroke. You start to worry about a stroke and you'll miss the water. So as he's rowing, it's fast and clean, fast and clean, fast and clean, fast and clean. In other words, the oar was in the water, it was in the right place. Because if he misses on one side here, at that level, you're beaten out the door. It's the same way with us. Like if you were going to miss the ball in front of the goal, and what do you do about it if you miss it? So we've developed our own mantra of next ball, next ball, next ball. Stay in the moment, next ball. How do you stay in the moment? Give me a tool to help me to stay in it. It's next ball, next ball, next ball. And you could hear them calling it to each other when a fella missed it. And if a fella gets wide, I remember Eamon Cregan telling me, you've lost the plot altogether. We were having problems with shooting. You know, we had lots of wides. So we started analysing that and saying, right, you know, we can't have like all these wides. But you know what? Go for it. If you're going to go for it, go for it. If you drop the ball in, I watched the Ireland final in football, fellas dropping balls into the goalkeeper's hands and coming out with it. I'm just saying, no, and that doesn't work. More conviction on the ball. If it goes wide, you don't give out to the guy like we do in the field when the kids are there and giving out to him for driving a wide. That's negative, and that doesn't work. So I remember saying Larry Murphy blazed the ball wide against Offaly, and I said, great wide, Larry, great wide, well done. And Eamon Cregan said, you fucking losing the plot, going by, you know. And I knew him from being in Shannon, because I knew him well, one of the greatest hurlers of all time. But anyway, and a grand guy and a great hurler man. But it's the detail, and if you're controlling all the little things, you can control the detail. But you need the knowledge. I didn't have it, so you go find it.
Wow, so interesting. I wanted to ask you about something else. So I know, I think you even threw it up on the board at some stage around this time. Like, what is hurling? You know, let's go back. Let's establish first principles here. What is hurling? And we need certain markers. And
yes.
What's really interesting, I remember Davy Fitz talking when he was Wexford manager a couple of years ago, when he first got in there and he was having a big impact. And I remember him, or maybe it was second year, and he was, well, what was the difference with the first year it went so well and the second year not so well? And he said, our hooking and our blocking is down. And I thought, wow, can it be that basic? Is that is so important? And I was really interested to hear you doing an interview elsewhere. And you were saying that one of your key markers, I think you had about 6 of them, but one of your key markers was hooks and blocks. We're going to be the best hookers in Ireland, I think was the line.
Yeah. Look, I was trying to say, how do I measure performance? How do we get our team to actually really play every ball within the moment, defensively and in attack? What can we do to do that? So when you put the matrix up on the wall, then that brings you to stats. So what we did, we had hooking, blocking, and for example, if your man cleared the ball, we didn't blame the man marking the man who got the score. We didn't blame anybody, but we tracked back to where it started from by having that line, because we got it by the individual. And the God may strike me dead. Honest, on a Monday morning, we had a solicitor, a fellow called John O'Leary, a brilliant guy. His 2 favourite things in life, hurling and opera. Okay? Now, he'd go down well in most GA club rooms if institute said, this man's an expert on opera, you know, and they'd be saying, oh, holy Jesus, Mary and Joseph, what's going on here? But anyway, he was a brilliant man, great head. And we had him up in the stand, and he was given down to Seamus, who was sitting down, all of the detail, and Seamus was giving it to Rory, and Rory was talking to me. Now, the moves, and sounds arrogant, moves. I made the decision, and the boys agreed. I said, I'm the boss when it comes to moving. If the SHIT hits the fan, I'll have to take the hammer. Now, I'll probably get the credit that I don't deserve for if it goes better. But that's the way it is. But we're not going to have any committee meetings. We're not going to go grazing grass up off the ground wondering what we're going to do next. If I don't like what you're telling me, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to veto it. But if I like what you're telling me, I'm going to do it. And that's it. So there's no arguments about this, okay? So that meant that we had the team on the sideline operating as a team, as a full team. Niamh Fitzpatrick was there on the psychology side. Once I finished with doing the psychology, we brought it to a vote one time, I left Niamh off and I said, that's it. And you know nothing about hurling, you stick with the whole, that side of it. So that operation worked. But as part of that, John O'Leary would have the stats on my desk every Monday morning after a match at 9 o'clock. Right? I would wait for those though. I wasn't going anywhere on Monday morning for an hour until I looked at those. But I promise you, I could actually tell you the moves and I couldn't see it again because I hadn't time to be thinking through those things on the sideline. I was watching the overview, so I wasn't going into the minutiae. So it gave me a chance to relax and not have to think about all these things because I knew I had it the next morning if I needed it, right? So what you did then was you worked that. So you could say, okay, if you didn't hook or block, and if somebody wasn't blocking, and we had a marker on who was clearing, that meant that you could actually find out, like Martin Story's man. Like one day, Martin Story went berserk with me because I put him up on the board for -2 points. Right? He had got 1-4 or 1-3 or something, got -2 points. And of course, the boys were all laughing at him and he was looking at the board. And he goes, well, oh, Christ, what's this about? How did I get -2? Jesus, I was the best forward you had. I said, you were, but this is what happened. X cleared that ball that time. I wound up in the back of our net. Yeah. That's one goal gone. Yeah. The so-and-so happened. That happened as well. And, you know, but eventually he saw the merit of it. So bit of fun, but it kept everybody on. I'm going to wind up with no score tomorrow after getting about 6 points here. Yeah. You know, it's a psychological thing. It's a subliminal thing, if you like.
And did you get to a place then where you were watching certain games and you were hooking and blocking and putting pressure on and you thought, this is beautiful, this is it?
Absolutely. I only watched, a fella gave me a present, and he was very nice to do it. He made a whole thing on a memory stick of 96. Well, he got it there a couple of weeks back off him. And he said, I want you to have this. And he gave it to me. So, and I was very kind of him to go and do it for me. But anyway, I only saw the Kilkenny match for the first time ever. I don't look at those matches back too often. I don't ever try it. I don't have the videos written of them. I prefer to have it in my head, actually. You know, the memory is nice to have. But I've actually watched the match between Wexford and Offaly, or Wexford and Kilkenny in the first round of the championship in '96. And Sean Flood was playing cornerback, and I was surprised we had picked him cornerback. I said, Sean, but we picked him to mark Charlie Carter, and he had a marvellous game. So I was just telling somebody, I'm going to give him a ring now and tell him, Shawnee, by the way, that match, he had a great game. And knowing Shawnee, he'd say, Jesus, it took you 25 years to realise it. But anyway, the point is, they got through for an absolutely certain goal. And you remember JJ Delaney put a great block on Shamie Callan. And as I said to JJ at a match one time when we were playing hurling for cancer, everybody forgot that Shamie Callan got 2-5 before that, and that JJ got all the credit for this one hook, but there was a vital hook as well. But Shawnee Flood got a fantastic hook. If they'd have got a goal that day, we were gone, and he made the hook on it. So what does hooking and blocking tell me? It tells me the intensity of our team, and if you're not out hooking and out blocking the other team, your intensity is not as good. Because don't forget, playing by the rules meant a lot to me. I wanted to see us win something, but I wanted to do it in a proper way, and discipline was a fierce important point for me in our game. Right. I did not want us giving away frees. I was looking at stats, Gary Kirby getting 7 and 8 points in matches, and all these great free takers, and he was great. We couldn't afford to do anything. If we couldn't give anybody, and I'm saying this again without being boastful, the other fellas know this as well, I made a point, if Gary Kirby gets more than 4 points, we'll probably lose the All-Ireland final. He got 2 and we won by 2. Now, is that brilliant thinking? No, it's not. It's just a matter of focusing on something for a while. And so you needed to learn by hooking and blocking how your team were doing in the intensity side of the game. Were they working hard enough? Because we agreed at the start, we need to do a lot more than other teams need to do for us to win. So we need to work harder than every team we're going to play. And if we don't outwork them, we won't win. And that's what we do. Indication of that. And the other thing we had another mantra as well, which was, if the ball breaks, I know I did it myself, and the ball breaks before you, and you wait for that split second for someone else to go for it, you're gone. It'll be gone. So we had a situation was drive. The minute the ball drops, drive. The minute you see it, the word you had, drive. And Michael Dignan, we won with Leinster final, went up to the bar, and that was a great Offaly team. I loved that team to bits. They were great guys. They were absolutely fabulous guys. Honestly, just I don't know. I can see why. They grew up together. They came through Burr CBS. They were just a joy. And I'm so sad to see that they've gone downhill a little bit. And please God, they'll come back. But we went up to the bar after the match to meet the Offaly lads. And Michael Dignan was there, and he congratulated me, and they were very, very generous, right? And he just said to me, Jesus, he said they were flying. He says, you know what? I was there looking at them, and they were just driving by us as if we weren't there. And he used the exact words that we had as a mantra. Amazing.
Yeah.
And I know lads did deliver on it. Deliver on it. And in the dressing room, there's no point in the dressing room at half time giving sermons, because I've been in dressing rooms on occasions where I didn't even think this fella's going to stop talking sometime now. And I'm a devil to talk myself. I know I am. But the point was that there's two key matrices you have to concentrate on. And I always said, it's three things, and after that, we're being superfluous. Get the three big issues out here, and we just throw them out there and say them and repeat them. And the power of thrice, say it 3 times, say it 3 times, say it 3 times, and bury it in people's heads. If you don't do that, you're done for, okay? You have to do it. So we had a man down at half-time in the All-Ireland final, which was the most unlikely man that I ever could imagine being sent off, was Eamon Scallon. Now, he was very unfortunate what happened. There was a row broke out, and everybody got into it for a few minutes, and Pat Horan was nervous, I'd say. And when he went to throw the ball in, Eamon Scallon went to pull, and then he went to pull again. And Gary Laffin stuck his head in behind Steve McDonough, and it hooked his hurley, and he pulled on his own. So it looked bad. It looked like as if he was pulling on, but he did. It wasn't that. So he got the line. Now, I know that when I was at the press afterwards, I said if he deserved to get sent off, that's fair enough. Now, I didn't endear myself to some of his family members because they thought I wasn't standing up for him. But if I didn't see it by then, I didn't know then, and only afterwards I saw it. But I'm just saying that we went in with 14 men. So the point is in the dressing room. Like, you go out there to get revenge against Limerick. This is the time we get back to discipline. No fouling, no fouling, no fouling. Discipline, discipline, discipline. We need to go to the second half, and we didn't foul in the second half and inside the middle of the field. Now, like, I know that the Limerick fellas felt the next day that there was something wrong, that they didn't get a free in the second half. But that was our game plan, not to give any frees away, not to give them away, because we couldn't afford to. Yes. And the lads stuck to it. But that was because we had a plan on that. That's all. No other reason.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.